Good evening. It is 7:09 on June 14, 2022. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education meeting. This is opening for open session. Here is your board clerk, Mr. C. Joseph Chang.
Good evening. I would like to open for tonight meeting. First of all, I'd like to do a roll call. Mr. Kiraki.
Present.
Mrs. Ryan.
Present.
Mrs. Cowell.
Present.
Mrs. Chung.
Present.
Mr. Joseph Chen. Present. Okay, I have one item cross section I'd like to report. The Board of Education vote in the cross section to take action to approve a settlement agreement for the student number 6924. And besides that, I think that the cross section we only do halfway. So after we finish the open section, we will continue go back for the closed section. Okay, agenda 6 call to the order. 6A, pledge of allegiance. Please rise, face to the national flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
6B, approval of agenda. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Any
Second.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mrs. Cowell, second. Roll call. Mr. Kiraki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Mrs. Cowell,
Aye.
Mrs. Chung,
Aye.
Mr. Chen, aye. Motion carried. Agenda 7, San Marino Unified School District Community Spotlight. 7A, San Marino Police Department and Fire Department, Dr. Territory.
Yes, thank you, President Chang, members of the board. Oh, I'm sorry, Clerk Chang, members of the Board of Education, executive team. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I am very pleased to present two very distinguished individuals with recognition that is very well deserved. And I'd also like to express my sincere appreciation on behalf of the board for our wonderful Mayor Jakubowski for being here this evening as well. So with that, the San Marino Unified School District has enjoyed a long-standing partnership with the city's police and fire departments on all matters related to student and staff safety. In a modern world where health and safety issues are increasingly impacting public education, it is imperative that we ensure that these entities continue to work together collaboratively. And to do so effectively, it is important that we recognize that the individuals who are serving the community, the fire department and the police department, their ethic, their attitudes, and their beliefs are those of the leaders that really do set the tone for their respective departments and the community as a whole. So there are two exceptional leaders that I would like to recognize this evening on behalf of our wonderful Board of Education and administrative team for their dedication and their service to the students and the staff at San Marino Unified School District. And they are Police Chief John Encontro and Fire Chief Mario Rueda. These two community leaders are local heroes, and their service and commitment speak for themselves. So on behalf of the Board of Education and our administration, I would like to present you both with plaques commending your many years of dedicated partnership with our school district. So thank you and congratulations.
So before we present the two plaques to the two chiefs, I also like to appreciate our Mayor Jablowski with her excellent leadership. So they are very efficient during the, we have for the graduation, they just send the police, the workforce to help. So we have a very wonderful graduation. And besides that, grad 9, the fire chief, they under your leadership, we are smoothly take care for the one of the senior student. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, all the, yeah.
Chiefs.
What, you guys aren't staying for our meetings? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Good evening.
Bravo. Congratulations.
Okay, next, let's go to the public comment, agenda 8. The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B to ensure the public right to be heard in any matter pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Person who wish to provide public comment will have 3 options to submit public comment. The first one, submit through an online form. We have to collect this public comment from the today 11 a.m. through the 3:30 p.m. So Jennifer, do we have any? Okay, thank you. And the second, request to speak during the meeting via the Zoom. During the public comment, the meeting will pause for 1 minute to take a request to speak. The raise hand function is used to take requests during the public comment period. For online attendee, press the raise hand icon to add yourself to the queue. For phone attendee, dial the *9. The speaking order will be determined based on the order of a request received. Individual speaker will be unmute and call to the speak. Okay, let's start to collect the public comments through the Zoom.
We're pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters not on the agenda. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding items not on the agenda, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Mr. Chan, there is no request at this time to speak.
Okay, thank you. Third, request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment. So Jennifer, do we have anyone from the audience? Okay, thank you. So we conclude for the public comment. So right now, we are going to the AA. Communication from the audience regarding matter not on the agenda are to be made at this time.
We're going to pause for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters not on the agenda. If you would like to make a request to speak, press and raise the hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public request card. Thirty seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding items not on the agenda, press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public request card. Time has expired and there are no requests at this time.
Okay, let's go to the AB, communication from the audience regarding matter on the consent agenda are to be made at this time.
We're going to pause for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters in consent. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Thirty seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding matters in consent, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Time has expired and there are no requests at this time.
Okay, thank you. So AB is related to the agenda 10 consent section. So we will do the motion later. So right now we are going to the 9 public hearing. The Board of Education has adopted the board policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matter pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Person who wish to provide a public comment will have 3 options to submit the public comment. First one is submit through an online form. Second, request to speak during the meeting via Zoom. Third, request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. So the first one is that Jennifer, we have any for the public hearing issue? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, the second request to speak during the meeting via the Zoom. So Eric, right now you can open to collect the
That is
public
for
comment.
9A, correct?
Hmm?
9A? We're pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding the 22-23.
Yes, 9A, yes. The public hearing and comment on the 2020 to 23 proposed local controller accountability plan, yeah.
So we're pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding the 22-23 proposed LCAP. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise
No.
icon.
So prior to that, Dr. Richter would like to make an introductory statement.
Okay,
Is that
yeah,
okay?
yeah, okay, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Delatorre. The Board of Education is to conduct a public hearing to discuss the proposed 2022-23 LCAP as in accordance with Ed Code 52062. Today's public hearing was communicated to the public through the Tribune newspaper, and the proposed LCAP was posted on the district's webpage for public review. The meeting will now pause for 1 minute to take requests to speak.
We are now pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding the 22-23 proposed LCAP. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Thirty seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding the 22-23 LCAP, press the raise icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Time has expired and there are no requests.
Okay, how about the any audience in person request to speak right now for the agenda 9A? Okay, thank you. So we conclude for the 9A public hearing. Right now, let's go to the 9B public hearing and comment on the 2022 to 23 proposed district budget. Dr. Michael Lin.
Thank you, School Board Clerk Chang. The Board of Education is to conduct a public hearing to discuss the 2022-23 proposed district budget as in accordance to Ed Code 42103. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Negroy to initiate the timer for 1 minute to accept public comments on this item.
We're now pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak during the 22-23 proposed district budget. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Thirty seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding the 22-23 proposed district budget, press the raise hand icon or dial *9 or submit a public request card. Time has expired and there are no requests.
Thank you, Eric. So right now I'd like to collect the public comment on the 9B in person. Jennifer, do we have any public comment? Okay, thank you. So we conclude for the 9B public hearing and comment on the 2022 to 23 proposed district budget. And as you know, we already collect the public comment in the room for the consent section. So right now I like to my board fellow make a motion. Anyone make a motion in a second for the consent agenda
Do the public comments on consent agenda?
Well, I already correct.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second?
Okay, good. Roll call. Mr. Kiraki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Mrs. Koya, Mrs. Chong,
Aye.
Mr. Chen, aye. Motion carry. Agenda 11, communication section, 11A, communication from the Board of Education, staff from the Mrs. Koya.
I am just happy to be here. You all have gotten me very busy.
Yeah.
and, we'll just move on from there, but thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay. Next, the Mrs. Chong.
Sure. So I've been busy since the last meeting, I think, with a lot of graduations. So it was just wonderful to see all of the students graduating, promoting. I think I counted at some point and it was around 800 students promoting from one to the next. And it was just really wonderful to be back in person with everybody, to really be able to celebrate that and to see the families. Other than that, I think the school year ended very well. I want to repeat my thanks to our police department and our fire department. They were indispensable, not only in keeping us safe, but I think their presence really helped assure everybody that safety was always going to be a priority for us. So since then, we appointed Ms. Caldwell to the board. Thank you very much for serving. And that was a really great opportunity to meet people in the community who wanted to step up into that role. So I'm just very, very grateful as always to the community for their willingness to say yes to so much that we ask of them.
Thank you. And Mr. Kiraki?
Yeah, thank you. So like Board Member Chong, I also attended multiple promotions and the graduations, and it was wonderful to see those students take big steps into their next step in their education and their futures. And so it was very encouraging and inspiring. Also attended grad night, had the opportunity to volunteer throughout the night and help provide our graduating seniors with a great evening, which I think was very well enjoyed by many. I also was invited and attended the speech and debate banquet, and I know that Board Member Ryan was there as well. That was a great, very wonderful opportunity to see the speech and debate students receive awards and be promoted for executive cabinet positions and captains and to really allow the students to reflect amongst themselves about each other, because there were underclassmen that were giving speeches about graduating seniors as well. And it was really great to hear that perspective. And I'm currently not physically present in the meeting tonight, but I'm attending by Zoom because I'm currently in Louisville, Kentucky with 13 of our San Marino High School students from the speech and debate team for the national championships. And I am happy and proud to announce that today, this afternoon, we found out that one member of our speech team and one member of our debate team have both qualified to move on to the octo finals at the national championship level. So that's very exciting. The whole team is here and encouraging each other. And it's a really wonderful opportunity to see the accomplishments of our students.
Thank you. And the next, Mrs. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Just to report, Dr. Delatorre and I had met with the San Marino Tribune, and I want to publicly thank the Tribune for their coverage of our 4 schools, as well as the focus on our achievements of our students and families. So together, we had a wonderful year, and it was well covered by the Tribune. In May, I attended a lot of graduations. In fact, one day I attended 3 for my work and for San Marino. Light Up was wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell, for being part of the PTA affiliates. Stephanie Duncan, Liz, everybody who kind of pitched in and helped. My 5-year-old lab enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Dr. Richter, for sneaking him all of the skewers. HMS graduation, wonderful event. So we need to congratulate HMS as well as San Marino High School for doing a wonderful job. Grad night was very busy. And the kids that I saw and talked to, they enjoyed the evening very much. And then with Mr. Kalaki, I did attend the speech and debate banquet. I'm sure Mr. Kalaki didn't notice, as I did, that it was a 4-hour banquet and that the students are wonderful speakers. So I was really impressed with the caliber of students that we have, and we continue to produce each and every year through the program. Special board meetings, I attended those. And then City Club had a wonderful grande fiesta to celebrate the return of City Club to kind of in person. It was attended by Dr. Delatorre. I think members of our cabinet went, the police chief, fire chief, Mr. Chang. It was just well attended and people just relaxed and had a great time. For myself, professionally and as a member of this board, I continue to kind of work at my own craft. So I have taken coursework on safety measures and lockdown. I also attended the Stanford math curriculum review and looked at that and what it entails for our students. Title IX training, I received that. Parts of understanding HR and all of the complexities and suicide training and prevention. So those things I did in the last week and a half. And then congratulations to Ms. Jeannie Caldwell for accepting our invitation to join. You have no idea how blessed our board is to continue to have members of our community step up and come forward so quickly, lock the doors in case she changes her mind. And finally, I wanted to say that I think Mr. Chang and I attended the celebration of life for Kenneth Veranda. It was a beautiful service full of the things that he loved, which was music, his family, his extended family, and it was very well attended, also in the heat, multiple hours. And so, yeah. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, on behalf of Board of Education, Board of Education, so I like to welcome, our new fellow, the Mrs. Caldwell. So actually, I was working with Mrs. Caldwell from 2001 to 2009. Yeah. I trying to prepare one picture because I forget, so maybe I can do it later. So we went to the CSBA together. Yeah, you probably forget the picture. Secondly, I relieved because I think for the school graduation is wonderful and smoothly and safe. For this year, for school graduation, to me is very meaningful because the last couple of years, because of the COVID-19 issue, as you know, I almost work with Steve Choi every day, looking for the how many cases we have. So what was very time consuming, but I want to make sure we are most safe school district. Yeah, we did a good job. Yeah, so thank you for the the administration, the staff, cabinet, and the teacher, and the classified staff, and the parent and the student. Thank you. And next, June 6th, I went to visit the Valentine in the middle school, summer school with Dr. Directori and Dr. Richter. So, I think it's a good, our young student, they come to the campus, start to have the new life, not just stay home. Yeah, that's good. And besides that, I want to mention one meeting I attend, even not really directly related to the school. So June 7, I attend the Huntington Library leadership meeting. So we address one issue, the water issue, water supply, demand issue. The reason I like to mention about this issue, the Huntington Library, the administration and the executive leader, they already start to think about what happened, the water. As you know, the California government, or the local government trying to restrict our water. But in Huntington, because they also need to maintain all kinds of species for the plant. So end up this a very touchy issue. So we are the board and the administration. We need to figure out how we want to do the PR to let educate the community, whether we entitled to consume the water or we cannot do it. But if we don't do it, then all the plant, species, some they already maintain 100 years, they may die. So actually, this is a very complicated issue. So how to go through the education point of view. So I would like to suggest to our school district, Dr. Directori, probably we need to educate our students how to appreciate the water, because this is a very important issue. Yeah. So I hope may not be the curriculum, but this we just mention about how important. Yeah. So this is the reason I mentioned about I have this meeting. And besides that, I also attend the Mr. Ken Baranda memorial service. To me, Ken Baranda just like my mentor. When I moved in the early 90s, and he very active in the city club and the Rotary. So like we always rely on for his life experience and teach us how to be the good volunteer. So I got him a lot. Yeah, actually. Before he passed away, he also called me. So I think I will erase this message, because I think I mentioned to you before, even he's the owner for the private school, but he always encouraged me. So you have to keep doing and then maintain, the school district. Make sure, we are a good school district. We can survive during the COVID-19 stage. Yeah. So I very appreciate. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the 11B communication from the student board member. I know tonight we are not ready.
We don't have a student board member typically over the summer period when we'll be presented to the board in the fall.
Okay. 11C, communication from the superintendent. Yeah.
Thank you, President Chang. Briefly, I would also like to express my sincerest gratitude and appreciation for all 7 board member candidates that interviewed for the vacancy recently, and especially to board member Caldwell, whose 8 years of prior experience on the board uniquely qualify her to hit the ground running with the many, many issues that the board is currently addressing. So thank you for your service and your volunteerism. We really appreciate that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about safety and security this evening because I've been receiving many, many inquiries on the heels of what has happened in Uvalde, Texas. And I think it's important to just provide a brief update and overview to the Board of Education on what the district is doing and just a little bit of background. So in response to the Uvalde tragedy, where an 18-year-old shot and wounded his grandmother and then fatally shot 19 students and 2 teachers and wounded 17 other people in the process, I have received many inquiries from the community on what our school district is doing to keep our children safe. The district's top priority is to keep our students and staff and our campuses as safe as possible. We didn't just start this after this tragedy. We started this many, many, many years ago, and it is a continued effort. So I'd like to take this opportunity to inform the board that SMUSD, SMPD, and SMFD have been collaboratively working hard for many years now to be as vigilant and as prepared as possible for such an event. First, the district is required by the state to have school safety plans for each of its schools that are reviewed and approved by both the fire department and the police department. And they are presented to the Board of Education annually for approval. These plans are shared with the public generally, but specifics are somewhat guarded because we don't want to place our students and staff at risk because a bad actor has access to our evacuation plans, etc. We have made several improvements to the physical security of our schools by installing security cameras and security gates at both of the elementary schools. We have security cameras on all of our campuses. And we have also installed temporary fencing at the middle and the high schools. We recently have reviewed signage for all of our gates because we're an educational institution. Typically, we are very welcoming. We want people to feel that they are safe and comfortable on our campuses. Our world is changing and we have to make adjustments appropriate to that. So we are going to be purchasing signage that will say, please keep these gates closed at all times while school is in session. And that's just something that we need to do going forward. In addition to that, in the years past, we've had school resource officers that have been stationed primarily at the high school. There was a period of time where we went through an agreement with the San Marino Police Department to have 2 school resource officers. One, I believe, was going back and forth between Carver and the high school and the other at Valentine and Huntington Middle School. Part of that effort was simply to ensure that there was more of a police presence on our campuses. And that police officers were seen as an essential part of our community, not as a threat by our students, parents, and teachers. In 2014, I worked really hard to execute an agreement with Dr. Ephraim Belize, and he is a Harvard-trained forensic psychologist that works routinely with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to provide training, guidance, and assistance. He is an expert in school violence prevention and threat assessment. He continues to work with our school district on training our multidisciplinary team that is district-wide to be able to effectively address internal and external threats. And we do this on an ongoing basis, and we do it effectively. We are going to continue all of these efforts in addition to having a security expert walk our campuses to point out some issues that we may need to bring back to the board for consideration. But what I would like to do is to agendize with, of course, the board's approval, a more comprehensive safety update and presentation on June 28th to give the board more information on what we are doing currently and what we will be doing prospectively. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda 12, communication from the audience regarding matter on the information agenda are to be made at this time. Eric.
We're pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding the information items on the agenda. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public request card. Thirty seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding the information items on the agenda, press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public request card. Time has expired and there are no requests at this time.
Thank you. Jennifer, any public comment in person? Okay, thank you. So let's start for the agenda 13A 2021 to 22 college admission report. Principal Kurtenbach and Vice Principal Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Ching, members of the board, Superintendent De La Torre, and executive team. We really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening about the accomplishments of the class of 2022 in their post-secondary plans. We also appreciate your patience as we wrapped up this school year and pushed this report to this evening. I bring with me tonight our assistant principal in charge of counseling and guidance, Mr. Carlos Casem-Clay, and in spirit, the entire San Marino high school staff whose dedication and effort supported these students in reaching these goals. Which button?
That one.
Okay. All right, good. As you can see, our students have been admitted to many prestigious and post-secondary institutions. Each of our students managed to meet the expectations of these institutions, despite the students having at least 2 counselors in their career at San Marino High School, as well as all the challenges of the limits created by the pandemic. We're proud of every single one of them and are thankful for the support given to them by you, the Board of Education, our great executive team, and the staff at San Marino High School, our parents, and the community of San Marino. We also have this as a poster, which we'll have delivered to the district office. I think it'd be great to display it, and we'll also get you a copy of the one that we used last year. We seeing a kind of growth of our students' access to many of these great institutions. You'll see here the class of 2022 performed very well on several key metrics needed to qualify for these post-secondary institutions. We have a very, very strong average GPA and SAT score. And while the number of institutions students applied to has increased, we are working on ways to increase students' focus on institutions which meet both their interests and their qualifications more effectively. We went from 11 to 13 on average. That's not unheard of. That's kind of how the trend is going in most high schools these days. More applications, especially with the Common App, making it very easy to apply to several institutions at once. And the cost of the applications to the UCs and CSUs remaining pretty steady at $70 per application. Next, you'll see a few more data points. By doing this, the work about connecting them to their institution with their interests as well as their talents, we're able to not simply increase our acceptance rate, but connect students to more institutions that meet their needs, thereby giving them more power to select and providing them increased application success, along with the confidence of knowing they are more than well prepared for the institutions they ultimately elect to attend. We had a big increase in the number of schools with 100% acceptance rate last year. I believe that was in the 30 schools range. We're up to 50 schools. There's pretty strong consistency on the acceptance rate, 21% acceptance rate last year. I think it was 19%. We're going to do what we can to reach out to those students who were waitlisted to see if they have maybe changed their mind once they got off that wait list and maybe got connected to a different university than the one they originally said they would attend. I'm going to hand this next piece over to Mr. KC, who's going to talk about some of the work that we did with our students to get them prepared to go to this institution.
Thank you for having us tonight. I wanted to provide a little bit of kind of background for what our counseling staff has done throughout the last 2 years, but specifically this last year. A lot of what we've done is essentially what we've tried to do is basically have it so that our students are getting a lot of that information early and often. So what we have here is our students going through a systematic approach. We have one-on-one meetings with each graduating senior. And in those meetings this year, we revamped. The big focus this year was on essay writing. When we look at our students' scores, grades, they're exceptional. We knew that with many schools, and this is what our advisors tell us as well, moving towards test optional, so using less of SATs and ACTs, we wanted to focus on essay writing, and that was going to be a big focus this year. And that's what our one-on-one conversations did this year. We have every year we put out, and we're going to continue to do this next year. I'll give you a little preview later on, a list of essentially sessions that we did with students, both in class during the day, which is something that we had never done before, and then also with students one-on-one. We also started a new session this year called Open Labs, where students could come in and get help with applications as well as their essays. We had in our workshops, for each of these workshops that you see over here on the left, we did a student one during the day, and then during the evening, one for parents as well. During many of these sessions, we regularly had between 60 and 100 parents and students showing up via Zoom. So we wanted to make those accessible, especially during the early stages of the pandemic. We'll go to the next slide. Now, this is a larger picture, and our counseling staff is built into 4 teams, 3 main teams, student wellness and support, college and career, and scheduling and curriculum. In grade 8 through grade 12, you're going to see a comprehensive curriculum in terms of what we're going to give students. And we're going to reflect on this and continue to improve this every single year. This is a lot of information on this slide, but basically what I wanted to highlight here is starting with our students at HMS, they're going to see us. They're going to see us, the counselors are going to come through and talk about what the expectations are and what our school has to offer in terms of scheduling and curriculum. We're going to start talking about college very early with our 8th graders. We did that in March. We're going to promote our school and what we have to offer. But from grade 8 through grade 11, everyone's going to get a counseling meeting, one-on-one session. And we've actually made those meetings longer and more robust through our counseling teams. We're adding more, we're constantly adding more and trying to make sure that our students are informed, our students are in the driver's seat, and our parents are too. So each of these that you see for each of the grade levels, we did mostly in the fall and in the spring. I'll notice a couple highlights up here. We had over 180 Huntington Middle School parents log into our evening meeting when we'd explain the expectations and also the scheduling options that students had as they moved into San Marino High School. For grades 9 and 10, the focus is student driven. So this is myself, Mr. Kurtenbach, all of the counselors going into classrooms during 4th period and delivering lessons. And these lessons are student centered. Yes, we're delivering information, but what we're also doing is talking about engaging the students in these aspects. And Naviance is the main college application tool, but it does so much more. The Naviance Strengths Explorer is something that we use with our 9th grade students. And what we want to do is if we're going to ultimately go to the college where that's the best fit for the student, they have to know themselves. They have to know what they want. They have to know what they want to study, a number of things. So we want to start that early. So in each of these sessions, you'll see that the wellness committee, the scheduling and curriculum, and the college and career are all a part of it. And they'll put little bits of it into each of these different sessions. In grade 11, you'll start to see the shift to college. So the big lesson, and this was a pretty extensive lesson this year, about an hour long, we had students conduct a super match. So they go through, and I'll give you some of that data in a second. They go through and they put in what the colleges that they're looking for. What are they looking for? So that's what our juniors did this year. And that's what our graduated seniors did as well. Through the super match, you want to make sure that they're looking at these colleges, having discussions about it, being informed. And that's what we hear from students, because we take those students' feedback. What is it that they wish they had known? And we put out a video about this as well also. What is it that they had known more before they start the application process? Is start earlier, more information, more prepared, more organized. So we want to give them the opportunity to do that in kind of a less stressful. The earlier, the better. The more time you have to plan, the easier it's going to be. Next slide. I'm going to go over these really quickly, but this is our data. As our counseling team, we want to collect the data on each of these sessions and reflect on it. And we discuss these with the students. So you see, this is some of the data from the Strengths Explorer, looking at our students. And you see some of the strengths that our students have: competing, dependability, organizing. And we discuss these with the students during the sessions. The next slide.
This is the entire ninth grade. Every student gets ranked on each of these so they can understand themselves.
Yeah, this is cumulative. Of course, this happened in individual sessions as well. In 10th grade, it's focused on career. So they do the Holland Code results, the Holland Code, and these are the results up there. You see investigative as well as enterprising are the two highest. Not surprising, but what the students, it's meant for the students to reflect on this as well. So they'll engage in that. What are the types of careers that they might be interested in? And then in 11th grade.
Before you switch to that, what does realistic mean?
I know, I'm like.
Are they asking to be
What-
astronauts or what? I mean, what, see the very first one?
What
It's,
kind of,
is it real? What is that?
Realistic. So on the Holland Code, very specific question. The realistic. So basically, what that means is you want to use your hands. You're gonna be looking at jobs that are more engaging. You're working with people. You have kind of hints, but there's also some other jobs in there too, like an accountant. So you want things that are kind of black and white,
Very
concrete.
hands-on.
It's a terrible name.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
seriously, it
all
makes it
code.
sound like they might not.
So this is what's it. So, but when you do the Holland, so you get these things. So you get this report, right? And our students will go through it. This is all through Naviance, by the way. And what's important is for this, because the students will look at this too and say, and kind of laugh a little bit, like, oh, what does this mean? Like, what does this career mean? And so we want to discuss with them, like, hey, this is just one tool, one aspect, and then kind of dig into what this means. And so what we followed up, this specific question to follow this up is, which of these are you most interested in and why? Which of them are you not interested in and why? So it's important to like figure out, they of course kind of chuckled at, like, what does this mean? But making it something, and then, you know, once you get past that, they find those little kernels that apply to them. But you have to dig in. You just can't do it and be like, okay, here you go, kids. Good luck with that information.
These are the kind of conversations that you can take to counseling sessions and say, okay, so you rank time in these three. Have you reviewed some of the careers that fall into that?
I do.
Are any of those things that you thought about connected with why or why not? And then you can build off of that. It's an important tool, especially for 10th graders who might think they know what to do because it's something they've heard about. But I remember doing this with my group, and the artistic that came back is like, oh, yeah, but I never really thought of that. What's a career artistic? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm just going to go home and paint. It could mean that I want to be in graphic design or my own business. So it connects a lot of the ideas that kids have together and gives them other ideas for what go to college or what other jobs and careers they might.
Exactly. And so when they go to 11th grade and they look at what different universities have to offer, they can say, oh, okay, I am interested in publishing and advertising or whatever it may be, if I'm, for example, artistic. And then they're more informed. 11th grade. And this is the big shift, to college. So we use the Naviance system to first find out what their criteria is. What are they interested in? And this is this discussion that we engage. So we're doing this same session. We did this on the same day with students and parents. And we tell parents exactly what happened, what we did today. And we have a discussion about that. And then they find their match schools. I'll come back to that a little bit later.
I'm trying to be patient because the last time I clicked it. Jump. Okay. Thank you. So sorry, I've got some notes written down. Otherwise, I tend to talk too much. So you'll see here some data concerning some specific institutions that we looked at last year and we're looking at again this year. The Ivies, the UCs, CSUs, and some select colleges. Let's take a look at the UCs because that was a big one for us. We did do, and you'll notice a lot of applications. We had 265 students graduate, 821 applications to the UCs. It's extremely easy to apply to the UCs. The state of California has made that very, very easy. So we do have a lot of students who will apply to a lot of those institutions. We got a very high number of acceptances. I think our attending data is off. We actually have 74 now attending the UCs. In the Ivies, that is correct. We had 256 applications, six acceptances, and 3 attending. The interesting part when you look at this, especially with those institutions, you go, well, 6 acceptances, why didn't everybody attend? You could have a kid who applied to 2 and he picked 1, or you could have a kid who applied to 6 of them. And they're attending 1 as well. So we do have a lot of students who go for that as a reach. We do know that the Ivies are shifting their what they're looking for in terms of students as well. And we do know that our students tend to qualify if they're going to the Ivies. You can draw a line down to those 3 select there, which are Stanford, MIT, and Caltech. And you can see that a lot of those students will apply to both of those as well. The Cal States, we had 90 kids accepted and we do have 9 attending. That's a pretty high acceptance rate. The majority of the CSUs and UCs, if we were to do kind of a straight average, it's around a 20% acceptance rate, give or take, might be about 15% this year. So our students are doing exceptionally well, and everybody I think heard about the number of students we had who got into Berkeley, and then the big number who had evidently or who decided to go. So we're really looking at these schools, but we're also making sure we're looking at college fit. So one of the things that we're doing is designing a survey to go out to our students after their freshman year of college. And we're going to try to engage parents and students. We have their personal emails and we still have our parents' emails. And our survey is going to be designed around how prepared they felt to go to their college that they selected, whether or not they feel they got into their college that best fit them. And then, of course, what they feel we could have done to better prepare them, if anything. And we're going to try to use that data to not only inform the work we do with our counselors, but also the classes we offer and the way in which we teach those classes.
Could I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm a talker.
That's all right.
You need to know right now. So I saw a version of this where there was a comparison to the national acceptance rate.
Mhm.
And we were lower than the national acceptance rate on almost all of them.
Was that last year's?
It says 2022.
Okay.
So I don't know, but that's my question is, to me, that's an interesting fact and one that needs some pretty significant research.
In the Ivies, the average of the Ivies is 6.9. If you average all of them across, of course, some are like around 1.6 and then some are around, 7. So that's an average. I can look at all of the Ivies and do kind of a comparison based on the applications to each school.
The Ivies are great, but I mean, I'm, truthfully, the ones that I'm, really sort of looking at here are the UCs. And I'm showing a 20% acceptance rate, which is what you have. And the national average is 45.
On the whole average?
All I'm seeing is, I assume it's all of them. I don't know. I didn't put the chart together. I'm just
Yeah.
reading it,
Well,
But-
what we can do is disaggregate that so we can look at individual schools
Mhm.
and see how that compares as well.
But
Because
my assumption is, and it's kind of how my math works here, right? You have 820 applications and you have 161 applications. So that gets you to your 20%. So, I mean, maybe all of our kids, went to UCLA, and perhaps if that's what you're saying, UCLA just has a overall lower acceptance rate in the UCs.
Mhm.
But in comparison with and national average numbers, so this may be a bad metric, but it's literally the one on the chart. So that's why I'm bringing it up. The one on the chart says there's 45% national rate, and I would expect our kids to perform above the national average, and perhaps they do, but it certainly doesn't say that here.
So
Yeah,
can I actually say something to that, though? What she's referring to is an earlier draft. An earlier draft had different national rates, and I had a similar concern until I started thinking about it. And the earlier draft didn't include all of the work that you've been doing in the counseling. And so my immediate thought when I read this was, how much of our 2% acceptance rate is driven by the fact that kids are applying to these schools with a very, very low chance of admission because they are just seeing if they can get in. And to that, I really like the counseling work you're doing, because I think what's happening with a lot of our students is they think, I'm just going to apply because my mom really wants me to, or I just want to see if I can get into this brand name school. And yes, there is an element of wanting to see if you have a chance of getting in, because you really don't know what these colleges are looking for. But my concern is, and this also speaks to the increase of number of applications, at a certain point, you are expending your energy and your resources into applying for schools that may not be a good match for you in terms of how many schools are you applying to that are your reach, how many are your target, and how many are safety, knowing that those formulas and metrics have been kind of thrown out the window too. What used to be considered a reach or a safety is not necessarily that. So I guess my question then is similar to Ms. Caldwell's, except it's from the other side of it. How many of our students are applying to schools that they maybe shouldn't be applying to? And I say that hesitatingly because I don't want to discourage our students' aspirations, but I also don't want to look at that number and think it means our kids are not doing well. So I guess that's my question.
I would just, and I think digging into the data and the question you asked and what you asked is what we need to do. But in general, I would say a lot. Because you can just click a button and apply, because it takes all of your data that you've already set up on the Common App and just tosses it in, and then you apply. Essentially, all you have to do on your letter is sort of change Dear UC San Diego to Dear UC Berkeley to Dear UC Riverside. You can do that and just keep going. We actually have tried to counsel kids out of doing that because a lot of the schools aren't the right fit, because it's also not the best place for them to go for their major. A lot of kids will adjust their majors to try to get into certain schools. The challenge though is that you also don't want to say don't apply to X, Y, and Z school. Maybe those are the schools that are more appropriate for them. So on average, the average as we saw was 13. We have some kids who applied to over 30. So because it's just easy, the UCs and the CSUs, I think appropriately make it easy, because if it was hundreds of dollars to apply, you'd be taking out a large swath of the population. Our students can apply to a lot of them. You know, we're averaging, if you go 821, you're averaging almost 4 applications per student to the University of California. Now, obviously they're looking at them as separate institutions, but let's say out of those 821, 200 went to UCLA. The odds are is they're not going to get a high acceptance rate, because they're not going to take a ton of kids from one school. Berkeley was an outlier this year. Quite frankly, we're kind of interested, like, what was that about? And that's part of our first steps when we come back for the next school year, is our counselors reach out. Those institutions do have sort of live readings and give more information about, here's how we made some decisions last year, here's what we're looking at in the future. But those are great questions. I would say it's easier and more consistent with California, that Californians apply to more UCs than nationwide schools. From Nebraska, I'm not going to apply to all the UCs. More than likely, I'm going to apply to any in Southern California so I can get out of the cold. But that's not going to happen nationwide. You're not going to apply to a ton of UCs usually. So I would look at an in-state data versus our students, and then I would want to dig down and see kind of what different metrics are there to help us understand why we got a high acceptance rate maybe at one, but not another.
Aren't the counselors though still, so my kids have been out of this process for over a decade, right? But I can honestly tell you, they both applied to at least 13 schools, and their mom was a huge supporter of that because it's such a crapshoot. I mean, there are a lot of qualified kids who apply, and because there are so many qualified kids from all over the place that apply, you may or may not be accepted because there are clearly limits. And when you are, from a competitive high school, there are also, sort of these other limits about how many of us they're going to take, right? So, I mean, you have a very competitive pool, and you somehow need to stand out in that world. And I think it does lend itself. And it was always a huge issue for the counselors, and I completely understand that. But I think, part of my thing here is that, as I recall it, in every application, the counselor had to participate. Right. So the counselor knows the schools that the kids are applying to. And the counselor also knows, like, here's the GPA that school looks for. Here's the SAT range, assuming they still look for it, that they look for. So there are ranges of qualification. And I would think we would know, yes, you're qualified, or no, you have a 600 SAT score. That's never going to cut it. Right. So, I mean, those I think you could probably even just remove from the equation, because that's not even a Hail Mary, right? That's like not even close. But I think that it's that kind of analysis that we really need to be looking at. And then, of course, comparing to, whatever the national register is. I mean, Cal State is, I think, a little bit more homogeneous when you apply to the different Cal States. I mean, I know I totally get the UCs are a challenge. Ivies, whatever, and then these, the bottom right too, that's very difficult too. I totally understand that. But I would really like to see some detail on the Cal States and the UCs, because that's where, our kids live there, right?
I would say that the majority of our students qualify for nearly all of them because they do have extremely high SAT and GPA. So that's like the initial cutoff. Where the rubber meets the road are those personal statements and really why you want to go there.
But I mean, do the UCs and Cal States even look at personal statements now? Is that, I mean, I thought they were. Cal does.
Yeah, he knows better than I do, but yeah, they do.
Okay.
So there's a couple different ways to look at this.
Yeah, step over here.
There's a couple different ways to look at this as well. You could also look at that versus the 821 applications. You could also say we had 65% of students who got into UCs, which is pretty astounding. This data is from a little bit early. Students throughout, and I just got an email today about a student who's decided to go to.
I mean, the UCs and Cal States, right? You're combining the two?
I'm talking about
The
161 accepted.
161.
Divided by 265 students.
Okay, I see. But
Yeah,
it's the same logic. It could be multiple people getting into multiple.
And certainly, I actually will address this a little bit later.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's all right.
I mean, these are the metrics that, really identify our high school. So, I mean, quite frankly, the reason I'm here is to just be focused on the stuff we used to be focused on. And this is it. This is a big thing. This is what our parents expect, and rightfully so. I mean, this is the deal. And I think those are the kinds of things we need to be able to explain.
I have a question, and it's for the two of you guys. In terms of looking at Naviance, which is the program itself, and it's been used, for more than a decade. Did your kids use it, Jeannie?
Naviance?
Yeah.
I don't recall.
Okay.
It's been around for-
Yeah, long time.
I think we started around 2011.
So,
Then no.
so I'm wondering how Naviance addresses, with 21st century learning skills, careers, and that. How do you guys see it comparable to meeting the needs of that question as it relates to these future careers, these future looks at how, our job market is changing, right? So how are we preparing the kids, and how does this platform help our kids?
It really isn't set up to do that. It's set up to help a student identify their personal strengths and connect them with universities and colleges that want to help them enhance those strengths for a career. So if a student's strengths come out to be, I'm a great communicator and a great collaborator, They're going to recommend that there's these types of jobs that really use those skills and give you a successful career. Well, what universities best prepare you for those jobs and careers? These. That doesn't mean they have to select those. It's just giving them, listen, this is where your wheelhouse would be in terms of using a university to get a great career based on your strengths. If the strengths come out in a different area that aren't necessarily towards those 21st century learning skills, they're going to recommend different universities to do that. And it's good data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out, both for the universities and the kids. So you have to be honest and forthcoming with, here's what I'm really thinking, to get the university that you want. Now, the universities have to clearly identify themselves. They put the data in as well. They are working with Naviance. Naviance is looking at, okay, here's, the percentage of students who were admitted last year. They put that data in there. Here's what the colleges in those universities graduated this many kids. So you know that, hey, if I'm going here for this, I have a high chance of graduating with the degree that I wish to get. So there's a lot of data, but again, it's only as good as who puts it in. And that's why we always caution, even this data, this is all input by students. So, could we have had 300 acceptances to UCs? We could have. We're relying on them to report every single college that they applied to and the decision.
No ice cream cones for every acceptance letter anymore?
No, I.
For a rejection.
Are the rejection?
If-
What it's for?
We can get food services to okay that. Give it a shot.
There used to be something that I recall.
Rejection, ice cream,
We
rejection. vote.
definitely do everything we can to get that, but again, it comes down to, if I'm a kid and I applied to a bunch, I really want MIT and I got it, I don't really care about anything after that point. And maybe I don't report as many of those, or maybe after a while I start getting big senioritis. It's mid-May, I've taken all my APs, I'm kind of over it. So we're trying to do different things to engage them to get that information to us. We've engaged parents as well as students, but we are working on that because we do want the data to reflect what we actually are doing. And we know we're doing an excellent job, but we also want to know where we can improve all the time.
That's a super important distinction. So the application number is right.
We know the applications are right because they apply through Naviance.
Right.
The acceptances, the rejections, et cetera, don't come through Naviance. They come through.
And there's no other way you can get even nobody else. So it has to be reported.
Yeah.
So really there should never, you really probably shouldn't even have that acceptance rate up there.
I mean, when we start the presentation, there's a little caveat at the bottom that says this is data in, data out. Depends on who you are. Like I go and say, I got in all of them, but I picked MIT, and it could definitely not be that. So we're thinking of different ways to sort of get that information from students, but it's a challenge. And
Well, and it's always going to be person dependent, and anything you do that's human dependent is going to be flawed, always. So maybe you'll get better, but this is a huge metric here, right? And so I just, if I haven't made you sensitive to that already, I hope that you're hearing that. I would eliminate the 2% acceptance rate, and I would put your footnote and disclaimer on this page so that it's super clear that you don't know.
I'm super sensitive to it now.
Yeah.
There's lots of notes.
This really like critical dashboard metric kind of thing, right? That's a big one.
So and highly selected colleges are typically the ones that you saw there. You've got Ivies, you got the three Stanford, MIT, and Caltech, and that's an overall average. We obviously are really impressed with what our kids have done this year, and more so because of everything they've had to struggle through. I think our community is used to, you have the same counselor for 4 years and nothing ever changes. And then for the last 4 to 5 years, everything changed all the time. And then you tried to do stuff from a distance. So I think that as a school, we really teamed up and did an excellent job to get them where they wanted to go and where their best fit was. But again, we're continuing to do more research on that, and that's what that survey is about, to try to get some real information back from students who went to college and to say, you know what, you met my idea of what I thought I needed for college, and when I got there, it really played out that way or not, so that we can make different adjustments and do better for the kids. Mr. Casey.
So more data, and once again, this is as reported by the students. Our highly selective universities, UCs, privates, you'll see some disparities. So one little note to that, and this is a caveat we could add to that, as time goes on, and this is why some of the numbers have changed, we know more and more. So as we get, especially through the month of May, students are waitlisted, it gets more and more detailed as we take a look at it. Go to the next slide. You see in-state versus out-of-state. Our students, I'll give a little comparison about this a little bit later on. It's usually about 2/3 in-state and 1/3 out-of-state. And we had pretty much the same breakdown this year as well. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit, actually.
That pie chart should be flipped.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
it's
say.
gonna be the other way.
I thought I'd let that one go.
Through me for a second as well, but we'll come back to that in a little bit as well. So with regard to this year and how we performed, highly selective students, about 30% of our students, they went to highly selective schools. 31% are attending UCs. You see our CSUs, 8%. There has been some fluctuation since this was created in late May. All those percentages are generally higher. Some students who have gone to CSUs have now gone to UCs. Our community college rate has grown. You'll see that over the last 5 years, mainly because of the jumps that and the partnerships that we have with PCC and students being able to move to either Cal States, or for our students, what we've noticed is UCs. So they'll do their 2 years, or in some cases, 1 year through a special program, through an accelerated program through PCC, and then move on to UCs. We've seen a significant, this is typically about 20% for us that will attend PCC. We saw last year an increase, pandemic, maybe, tough to say exactly. And then an even bigger increase this year. This year we have really, it's still qualitative, but from what our students tell us is being close to family is very important right now in this particular period. That's what students are telling us. So they want to stay close to home, but they want to make that transition. They want to do it having the credits already there. And we've seen that as well with our dual enrollment program. Numbers increasing significantly. Students getting that credit, getting that college credit that they can then go and transfer later on to UCs.
Is USC, where's USC in that? Is it? in
USC would be highly selective. Absolutely.
I think this year is 3.
More.
There were more
Yeah.
accepted, but I think 3 chose to go. I want to.
Do you know how many were accepted?
16 accepted.
I can look that
That's
up.
quite a few, yeah.
16 was in that data chart that you sent out
Mhm.
before.
Published, yeah. Yeah, it was double digits accepted.
Do you think this year is a very special year for the college admission council? You know, I think this is the first time all of Claremont College, the 5 colleges that accept our students from the Pomona, McKenna and the Harvard Med, Pisa. Yeah. So you think because of COVID-19 isolation, so they are looking for special trait, like if a student they have a more activity besides the grading, yeah, then they will benefit to. So I really like to to. If you can analyze those they get the UC Berkeley, what kind of composition they from either 3A or besides academia or what they are doing. Yeah.
I will say that, and this is just like a rumor buzzing around in secondary education, that a lot of colleges and universities over accepted, because I think last year they kept their acceptance rates pretty consistent. And a lot of kids decided, you know what, it's a little scary to leave home because the pandemic was still kind of in flux and they didn't really feel comfortable. So we've heard that some universities decided to over accept because they felt like kids were going to drop out, not maybe attend at all. They are still looking for kids that they believe are going to finish programs. That's number one. You don't want to have an acceptance rate that's this high as a freshman, and then most of those kids don't graduate for whatever reason. And that's difficult for them to manage because of what we've gone through in the last couple of years. They have kids who will drop out for, you know, bigger reasons than they can really address. And as far as activities and athletics, that's really dependent on the university and the college and what they're looking for to round out a student body. We've all heard stories about people getting picked because they have a particular activity that's not necessarily as academically robust as another student. So that's always going to be in play, and it's really going to be dependent on that college each year. And that's going to shift based on, you know, how many kids they lost, what kind of talents those kids had, and how they can make an adjustment to bring them in, or if they even want those types of kids back again. But we're always doing reaching out to those admissions officers and trying to get more information about either what they looked for last year, so we can say, oh, this is why we got this many kids in, and this is why that metric is grown for us, but also what might we be looking for in the following year. That's a big challenge because as a senior, you don't have a lot of room to make a quick shift. You know? We want this many whatever athletes or this many people in this activity. If you haven't done that already as a senior, you're not going to be able to do that in 1 year. This one.
And I want to come back to that question as well, because this is a point that we raise with our students a lot and parents. And it's something in every session that we've had this year, we've addressed. And there's a mentality to do a lot of activities, and that this is the way to get into college. I want to address that in a second, but first, when we take a look, and these have fluctuated, this is the attending data. We do ultimately know this data because we have to send the transcripts to the universities. We will eventually know them. You typically, right now, it's kind of it's starting to solidify, but by the end of June, we'll have it pretty much done because we have to send it to them. So this is fluctuated, but what you'll see here is a significant change in previous years. In previous years, you've seen that light blue line has been basically our average. So we have seen a significant growth this year in terms of students who are going to highly selective schools as well as UCs. So there is a significant increase there from previous years. You see the out of state has about that 1/3 who choose to go outside of California. Why this is the case? There are many reasons why there's been a significant increase this year with both highly selective schools as well as UCs. There's so many factors. And I want to address that acceptance rate that we talked about earlier. Acceptance rates that we've heard, and we have professionals come in and talk to our parents, and we're going to do it again in the fall. And what we've noticed is acceptance rates are falling everywhere. With schools going towards being test optional as well as test blind, a lot of students are saying, hey, why not? Give it a go. And we see a huge amount of acceptance, a huge amount of applications to these schools. And so naturally your acceptance rate is going to be low. Harvard this year was well below 2% in terms of the acceptance rate. So the data as of this year, obviously that's still, schools report that when they want to report that. If it's a private school, they'll report it when they want to, right? UCs have deadlines and they report that out. It also is disaggregated by UC. Berkeley, extremely competitive. Okay, you're going to see them, well below 20%. Other schools, Irvine, UC Riverside, they're going to have a higher acceptance rate. So it depends on the type of school. Berkeley, UCLA, by far the most competitive. But you see here, our students have outperformed over previous years significantly this year. Why is something that we've been reflecting on quite a bit this year. What we've been told by admissions, the admissions officers that we talk to when they talk to our students and they talk to our parents, has been the importance of applications. I'm sorry, the importance of essays and your personal essays. Those are extremely important. And we talk about this in every single meeting with our students and our parents. We are competitive. Our SAT scores are competitive. Our grades are extremely competitive. You're doing lots of things. Our kids are doing so many things. We actually want to caution against doing too much. And what we want to say is, what we want to help our students do is demonstrate that, show that, and help them express that. We know they're talented, they're exceptional. We want to express that through the application process and give them that feedback. And so that's a main goal going forward.
One anecdotal piece of one of the students who got into MIT and ended up going there, his essay was based in his passion for magic, which was a deep connection toward his passion for technology, engineering. And that is, we feel, one of the biggest things that got him in there. We had another student who you can review their letters as they're sending them out or right before. Basically switched the name of the university on everything and sent them out. Didn't get a lot of acceptances, didn't take the advice. We kept telling him, you've got to make this personal statement, not just personal to you, but personal to that university. If you're just going to go and blanket it, you might get you might get far in the acceptance process, but after a while, it's going to look like you're really not that interested in the university. That's the whole idea behind a reader. They're trying to find kids who have a deep passion for not just what they want to do, but entering that university, because those are the kids who are going to stay. So these are things that we're addressing, but we're doing it earlier and more often. We've already been communicating with our seniors this summer, reminding them you should be writing your personal statement, getting a draft together, making sure that you looked at and sort of identified at least 5 to 7 universities that you really do want to apply to, that you've researched. What are some of the acceptance rates there? What are they looking for? What are their GPA requirements? SAT, test optional, test blank. What do they look for when they're thinking about having a student come to their school? They list all of that information. It's all in Naviance. It's at your fingertips. Because we've had kids come in and apply here, here, and here. They don't take kids that have a GPA that you have. Oh, well, why not? Well, it was listed right there on the front page of Naviance. You should know that. So those are the pieces that we're trying to get that information out early and often and connect with those kids. And I think that it's going to bear out even more so. I think because of the work that we started last year and that we continued this year, we're seeing that shift occur. I think we're having more kids come in. When he and the counseling team did those videos, what do you wish you knew before you started the process? Like to a T, every single kid in the video. I should have started earlier. I should have started in the summer. I should have started writing. I should have started looking at universities. Should have visited in the summer between junior and senior year. Because visiting during senior year, that's really cool, but you're already applying. You might find a place and go, wow, I spent all that time applying to this place and I don't like it. And now you have to make that shift. So it's really about early and often. And as he said, it's much easier to apply to a lot of places. So we are going to see acceptance rates falling everywhere.
So a look ahead. So we take a look at our data this year, and there's some significant changes that we want to make. Data was a good year, but there's some things that we want to do to improve. So in May, what we've already done is we added another session, in-class session with students, another 30-minute session with students.
By the way, that's the second time that year that they met one-to-one with all juniors.
Mm-hmm. And we called it the Junior College Jumpstart. And essentially in this grade level session, what we wanted to do is to start this planning earlier. So we have what's called the 333 college search. And in Naviance, which they already know how to do using the super match, they have to basically do these 3 things in order to get their senior meeting. Everyone's going to get a senior meeting, but in order to get your senior meeting scheduled, they have to complete these 3 things, and they can turn those in they can turn them in starting August 10th. 333 is basically, what are my reach, what are my matches, and what are my safety schools? This is something that we want all of our students to do. What's the purpose of this? Research. We want you using Naviance. We want you to get involved in this process earlier. There's a lot. We have an organizational tool that the students can complete. It's really in depth. A lot of the most detailed things you could do when you're going through the application process, but we want them to just have that basic information in there, their resume, as well as their brag sheet. So these are drafts. They're not the final version, but these are the drafts of each of those documents. And so they'll turn those in and we'll schedule them first come, first serve. Of course, everyone will get a meeting. In August, students are going to complete their activities. So they'll turn those in then. And then in August and September, before we even start the one-on-one meetings with students, we're going to be collaborating with the English department on essay writing this year.
Which they already started last year, which we're making a subtle shift because a lot of what we were doing is great, but there's tweaks to be made because the colleges and universities are looking at things different. So we want to make sure that we're staying the most current.
And what we tell students, grades 8 through when they graduate, grade 12, is what you want to talk about is the things that you're passionate about. So you could have a lot of activities, but what is the thing that you've taken? So if I've done 10 different things, great. Maybe you should do 3 or 4 different things and taking leadership roles in those things, taking on more responsibility. That's going to lead to not just a better college essay, a better applicant. And that's what we're trying to focus on. And so when we start in grade 9 and grade 8, what do you want to do? What do you do? And they don't have to have the answer then. But by the time they get to their senior year, we want to help them clarify that and demonstrate that in their personal essays. And make sure that their personal essays match their fantastic metrics.
It's the end of our 5-minute presentation. I do appreciate those questions and we will be digging into the data even more. The biggest thing we have to do is continue to try to clarify the real data versus what we think we know. And so we're constantly trying to think of ways to do that. Yeah, Mrs. Ring.
So I notice, close to 30% of our students starting to head to junior college. And you talked a little bit about the why, wanting to stay close to family. Do we have any data on after their first year or second year, how many are transferring? And then do they go to the UCs or select schools? And, like maybe financially, that's why they're going there, or maybe there's other reasons because this is a pathway to something. So what are some?
That's a really interesting question because the PCC they're really frustrated by that too. We're required to check in. We are for our CTE pathways. They're required to check to see if kids who transfer to UCLA then graduate. The problem is that none of the data is linked correctly. So you basically are chasing people. So I'm Shelley Ryan goes to PCC, transfers to UCLA. And all I'm trying to do is try to find where she is and to ask her, when did you transfer? Was it a good fit? Did you end up graduating? So they're actually trying to do some work that takes the state student ID for a student and links it all the way through undergraduate. So we would actually be able to see that data. That is one of the questions that we're putting into our student survey that we're building this year to ask these students at the end of their freshman year. And that would be, okay, so were you prepared for your freshman year? Yes. Have you stayed enrolled in your selected college or university? Student would say no. And then that would click to another question. What are you currently doing? Maybe, I'm bad at making surveys. That's why we have people at our school site who do better jobs at that. But that's what we want to do is find out if you didn't fit, why? Is there something we could do to help make a better fit for our students? And then where are you currently at in your process? Because there's various reasons throughout the pandemic. You would say, I stopped going there because I didn't want to pay $100,000 a year to not go to Yale and then sit at home. And so I'm going to wait and then I'm going to go. So that could be some of the reasons that our kids have chosen to go to PCC right now is because there's still some fear about leaving home, not being around parents, not being as close to home. This place has really done a good job of building their resilience, but they're not ready to take that jump yet. Some of them do want to transfer to the closer UCs like UCLA, and that is a lot easier if you go through the PCC route and then make a jump around sophomore, junior year. So we want to ask those questions too, because we want to know what our students are aiming for, whether or not we meet their needs, and what we could do better. We don't have any of that data now because I don't think we've ever done a follow-up freshman survey according to staff. That's not ever happened. So we're
My
building
kids
that.
got them.
They did.
I mean, okay, well, 2007, 2009, so way before you guys, right? But they had them. And I believe we parents were surveyed too. And I was just gonna say that I think it's harder maybe sometimes to find the kids than it is to find the parents because their emails are actually in your database. They know where their kids are. So you might want to just, I don't know what you can do, but I mean, you could send them a note too or
We
survey.
do collect all of our seniors' personal emails. Unfortunately, if they're anything like my son, by the time they're done with freshman year, they have like 15 different ones.
Well,
So-
but when they go to college, they get a new one.
Right.
And
they
so,
send us-
I think, it's the parents whose don't change and they may be able to hook you up with the new college one, but colleges are smart now too. They give them to you for life,
Yeah.
right? So super smart.
Yeah.
We
That
are
way-
working with the Alumni Association as well.
Right.
to
Yeah.
Connect with the graduates.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to get you anywhere. Either. Kids are gone, right? And I mean, this is kind of a big time in their lives and they're out exploring. And, I think honestly, you got to get well into your 30s before you start looking back with, fondness on your high school experience and wanting to reconnect. So we need that data sooner. And, I don't think there's anything to preclude you from asking the parents. They might not ask, but it'd be, because it's a good opportunity for that parent to then say what they liked and what they didn't like too. And they may be in a perfect position to want to do that at that point.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next 13B, 2022 to 23 proposed local control accountability plan, Dr. Lina Richter.
Thank you, Board Clerk, Mr. Chang, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and executive team. This evening, I am pleased to present to you an overview of the proposed 2022-2023 Lcap. Oh, thank you. I have control. The Lcap is a community-based, comprehensive, data-driven plan used to identify goals and specific actions aligned to state and local priorities to facilitate continued improvement. The board is mandated to adopt the district's local control accountability plan using the template provided by the State Board of Education on or before July 1st of each year. Did I already change that? My goodness. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide an overview of the proposed 2022-23 Lcap, highlight related outcome data, and review the Lcap adoption timeline. Commencing with the 22-23 school year, San Marino Unified will be in year 2 of its 3-year Lcap cycle. Because this is a 3-year plan, no significant changes were recommended to be made by the committee for its second year to ensure continuity of focus on set goals, implementation of identified actions, and the ability to effectively monitor progress throughout the entire 3-year cycle. There we go. I would like to begin this presentation by recognizing and thanking the district's 21-22 Lcap Educational Partners Committee for their time, their participation, their input, and most importantly, their partnership. We are also extremely appreciative and grateful of our 3 amazing high school students who attended nearly every meeting, even when assignments, tests, and finals were waiting for them back home. And as you can see, this is a list. I'm not going to read through them, a list of our entire committee. And again, I am very grateful for their participation and their input in the help of updating and developing the subsequent year's Lcap. Do I have to point this? There we go. Thank you. The 21-22 advisory meetings throughout the year were conducted in person this year. We're really excited about that. And they included 6 Lcap educational partner meetings and 4 district English learner advisory committee meetings. A draft of the proposed Lcap was also shared with the DLAC committee, which is our district English learner advisory committee, and the San Gabriel Valley SELPA to gather input and feedback with regards to goals and actions outlined for English language learners and students with exceptional needs. Today's meeting serves as our LCAP's public hearing, and on June 28th, the LCAP will be brought back to the board with a recommendation for approval. It's a little slow. There we go. This slide briefly highlights committee meeting dates and the focus of each meeting, as well as the adoption timelines, which were shared with the committee, and I have to say updated with the committee each time we met, because we engaged and had some very productive conversations. So it just gives you a timeline of when our meetings were, the dates of the meetings, and the content of each of those meetings and what we hope to accomplish. And again, you can see excuse me, that the public hearing is tonight. We'll bring it back on June 28th with a recommendation for adoption, and then we will be submitting it to LACO on or before July 1st. There we go. As mentioned previously, the LCAP is a 3-year plan developed by the district intended to align resources to goals and actions that lead to continuous improvement. Consistent with the recommendation of the committee, San Marino Unified will continue to focus on 3 main priority areas or goals for the subsequent school year. Challenges that help define the 21-22 school year, such as the pandemic, Omicron surge, quarantine, abbreviated remote and optional state testing, and the absence of the California school dashboard rendered it very difficult to effectively and accurately evaluate and engage in data analysis and data comparisons as we have done in past years. As such, the LCAP committee prioritized staying the course for year 2 and substantiated the need to continue to maintain an unwavering commitment to its current LCAP goals. They include the 3 that we see here up on the slide: exemplary teaching and learning, which basically is increasing the academic achievement for all students through personalized learning opportunities to ensure our students are college, career, and life ready. Our second priority is flourishing learning environments, supporting the social, emotional, and physical needs of all students through conditions that support learning, including professional development opportunities, instructional tools, and instructional technology. Our third goal is meaningful and authentic learning relationships, increasing student engagement and a sense of community to promote academic and social emotional well-being, and increasing parent involvement and engagement. And this goal is extremely critical, especially as we come off the heels of a pandemic. This slide briefly highlights the required 8 state priorities identified by the state as critical factors that positively impact student success. These 8 priorities are required and are included in the LCAP. They also effectively frame and support the district's 3 priorities. For the next few slides, I will briefly review the 22-23 proposed LCAP goals, metrics, and actions, including related outcome data. Data included reflects the most recently available data. As data continues to become available, it will be added and shared with the board at the June 28th regularly scheduled board meeting prior to adoption. So as we can see here, this is goal 1, focused on exemplary teaching and learning. The metrics that are included in goal 1 are listed on the left side here. They include CASP outcome data, and the most recent CASP outcome data that we have comes from 2021. Graduation rates, English learner progress, AP pass rates, access to a broad course of study, and more recently and newly added, iReady diagnostic assessments. iReady was added this year as yet another metric for measuring student progress in reading and math for students in grades K-5. On the right side, and in no particular order, are related actions identified to promote progress towards one or more of the identified metrics in goal 1. And some of the actions listed, I'm not going to read them all. They're here reflected on the slide. Expanded learning opportunities to address learning regression and increase student achievement, retaining counselors, retaining our ELD teacher on special assignment, expanded summer school courses beyond ESY for students with exceptional needs, extended learning opportunities that go beyond the bell and the regular school year, expansion of dual enrollment and articulated courses, and lastly, professional development opportunities. The related outcomes for Goal 1, all the data shared reflect the most recent data available for 2020 and 2021, with the exception of the iReady data. So everything on this slide reflects data from 2020 to 2021, except for iReady. As mentioned earlier, available outcome data should be viewed through a critical lens, as the past year posed certain challenges for teaching and learning, data collection, and progress monitoring. Absent state testing accountability measures, the requirement to administer the 2021 CASP and the suspension of testing in 2020, progress monitoring, analysis and evaluation of growth and like district comparisons was not feasible to the extent it has been in prior years. Current available data does, however, provide staff with informational data and a baseline from which school sites and the district can plan actionable next steps. CASP progress monitoring at the recommendation of the committee is also reported as the percentage of students who meet or exceed standards, making interpretation of student progress simpler and less complex for parents in our community. Based on available 2021 CASP data, we can see here that 83% of students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 district-wide met or exceeded grade level standards in ELA and math. Student groups, including students with disabilities, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, those are our students who are identified as low income, and our English learners, demonstrated lower performance levels in both subjects overall when compared to all students. Various data points obtained at the local level included AP pass rates, graduation rates, which continue to show sustained performance levels overall. 87% of students earned a 3, 4, or 5 on AP exams, and San Marino sustained a 95% graduation rate. And these are 2021 data. A slight decrease in A through completion rates was noted from 2020 to 2021, which continues to be addressed with the support of the more recent A through G completion improvement grant. Differences in percentages in the completion rates may also be attributed to the method of data collection. Data from this point forward will be retrieved from DataQuest and CDE, so we have a consistent and continuous method of assessing and gathering data. The newly added metric, the 2022 Spring Diagnostic iReady Assessment, shows that 89% of students in grades K through 5 met or exceeded standards in reading, and 83% met or exceeded standards in math. This metric will remain in the Lcap for the term of the cycle to provide yet another method of standardized data analysis. For goal 2, we focused on flourishing learning environments, and metrics identified to measure progress for this goal included all the metrics we see on the right side, including maintaining fully credentialed and appropriately assigned teachers, access to standard aligned instructional materials for all students K-12, technology access and connectivity, maintaining 1-to-1 device ratio, Calstrs or culture surveys that we administer to our students, our staff, and our parents, and professional development opportunities. The related actions are listed on the right side, and again, in no particular order, include the recruitment, hiring, and retaining of certificated teachers, beginning teacher support to develop teacher expertise, facility inspection tool to ensure our facilities are safe and in good repair, district nurse, health aides, and again, professional development focused on effective research-based instructional strategies such as universal design for learning, PBIS, and multi-tiered systems of support. They also include any type of professional development focused on social emotional well-being and social emotional learning. Related outcomes for goal 2 reflects data from 21-22. So this is our most recent data from this past year. SMUSD has continued to maintain 100% fully credentialed and appropriate teachers for K-12. We're extremely proud of that. Our schools this year were in exemplary status when compared to good status last year, based on the facility inspection tool report. Continued access to standards aligned instructional materials for all students, maintaining a 1-to-1 device ratio for all students to promote access and instructional technology. Continue to maximize teacher capacity and expertise through ongoing research-based professional development opportunities, and annual administration of the culture surveys for parents and staff with regards to creating environments conducive to student learning. Goal 3, we focused on meaningful and authentic connections. Metrics identified to measure progress towards this goal include attendance and chronic absenteeism rates, dropout rates, suspension and expulsion rates, the number of advisory committees that we held, whether it was for district English language learners or for the Lcap, data from climate surveys, and most importantly, the SMUSD Wellness Center referrals. That was a very important metric for our committee because the focus was heavy on social emotional well-being of our students. And the actions are listed there on the right side, and they include the extracurricular activities, extended school year for our students with special needs, chronic absenteeism notifications, mental health partnerships, which I believe San Marino has done an excellent job in fostering those connections and partnerships and maintaining them, professional development, opportunities such as Link Crew and Web at the high school and middle school respectively, the culture surveys, increasing parent participation in our DLAC meetings, our school site council meetings, and community building. I know that all of our schools at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, have really infused community building into their instructional day and made that a priority. And then lastly, interpretation and translation services, who we all know is Ms. Liu Zhang, and that really helps increase access for our parents in our community and really takes away that language barrier. The related outcomes for goal 3 also reflects data from 21-22, so it is the most current data. Our attendance rate overall remained at 97%. We're extremely proud of that. I think that's something to really celebrate. That is no change. The little NC means no change from last year. Chronic absenteeism, we did see a slight increase at both levels from grades 9 through 12 and K through 8 when compared to last year. A lot of that may have been factored in due to students having to quarantine, students coming back and having, to go home because they were exposed to students who were identified as having, COVID, whatever it may be. So again, we have to look at this data through a very critical lens. High school and middle school dropout rates is also something we need to celebrate. It remains at 0%. So does our suspension and our expulsion rates. Now, our Wellness Center referral data is something I want to elaborate a little bit on. Last year, the number of referrals from the Wellness Center came to a total of 92. This year, it came to a total of 199. And the committee really wanted to expand this and disaggregate it by school. So as you can see, 133 at the high school, 33 at the middle school, 17 and 16 at the 2 elementary schools. And these include referrals and actual visits, whether it's the intern coming into the elementary schools to consult and provide counseling services to students, or students visiting the wellness center at the high school. And now, of course, with our new wellness center at the middle school. So when the committee looked at this, we really dove into a deep conversation about how do we want to measure that? Because the initial intention was to decrease the number of referrals. After a lengthy discussion, the committee recommended that we actually would like to see an increase in the number of referrals, because with the increase in the number of referrals, that would mean that we are continuing to increase our support and our service to our students because we know it's there. It also means that students are starting to feel more comfortable frequenting the wellness center, and it's not something that is taboo anymore. It's somewhere where they know they can go and have a safe space if they just need to escape for a few minutes. Staff survey also continue to show that parents and staff maintain a strong sense of parent participation, as you can see from the survey results. Student surveys, however, warrant further attention, as evidenced by the slight decreases or no real change from last year in this area. One significant area that warrants further review and focus is the students' sense of meaningful participation. As a committee, many of the members recommended that this data also be disaggregated by the grade levels that take the survey, grades 5, 7, 9, and 11. So that data was shared with the committee and was reviewed and analyzed very carefully. And moving forward, the recommendation will be to include it in the next year's LCAP. This year again was, this past year again was not your traditional year, so they did not want to include it in this coming year, but in the following year, it is something that they would like to see reflected in the LCAP. I think it's also important to keep in mind that despite all of the obstacles that we have had over these past 2 years, San Marino Unified continues to maintain an unwavering focus on continued improvement with the ability to demonstrate success. This is a testament to our dedicated teachers, our staff, our administrators, our students, our community members, and our Board of Education, who unconditionally support and promote the academic and social emotional well-being of all of our students. That's the trick. Lastly, this slide illustrates the 22-23 LCAP approval timeline. Again, tonight is our public hearing for the proposed LCAP. June 28th, we will be bringing it back with any changes or updates that have been made to the proposed plan with a recommendation for adoption. We will also be presenting, as required, an overview of the local indicators, which we will see reflected in the California School Dashboard this year. It is reflected each year. On or before July 1st, San Marino's approved LCAP, along with the mid-year report, which was presented to the board in February. If you remember, that was that extremely long document that we were required to present to the board in February. Both of those will be submitted to LACO in conjunction with the district's budget and the budget overview for parents, which Dr. Lin will be presenting shortly. And that is the end of my presentation on our proposed LCAP, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any question? Mike? Okay,
I do recognize.
Yeah, okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
Make sure Mike didn't have anything. I feel bad for him. Okay.
I do not have any
No.
questions.
In the ether of Zoom. So I did have a question. So you sort of alluded to the low A to G completion rates as being possibly a data issue. I know that the AAC looked at that back in, I want to say 2017, 18, 19, around then, and they looked at the A to G, it was a 2018, 19 A to G alignment. And so one of the most significant issues with our students and our requirements is that we are not aligned to the A to G requirements. And so the AAC had gone around the issue trying to figure it out. And part of it was the foreign language component. And then part of it was some of the other increased number of requirements of, I think, might have been math or something. I forget exactly. There were a couple of courses, but I do recall a couple of counselors and teachers expressing concern around our special ed and our ELL students. And that by changing the graduation requirements to align with A to G, we may inadvertently disadvantage the students because of the need to be on a different learning plan. So I didn't have a chance to look at it, and I would be curious if we could look at that data and see whether or not we've improved or not improved, and if some of that could be addressed. I do have some concerns specifically around the foreign language issue because we've eliminated Japanese as a language, and we really are only down to Chinese and Spanish at this point. And I know, you know, a lot of students taking languages outside of San Marino High School, and that is not allowed to be added to their transcript. For whatever reason, I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad reason or a good reason, but it's something we need to think about. If one of our measures of success is going to be A to G completion, we need to figure out how to reflect that our students are actually meeting A to G through other means, and do that in a way that's responsible as a governing board as well.
Absolutely. And if I just may comment on that, I know that that is a focus of the high school administration, particularly with the new A through G completion grant plan that was presented to the board. But I agree, making sure that our students are set up for success and their pathway from 9th grade all the way to graduation supports A through G completion rates. The discrepancy in the overall score of completion rates, I'm referring back to some of the data that we pulled previously. If you remember when we presented the mid-year report, some of the data we pulled locally. And then when the CDE came out or DataQuest came out with their official reports, we found a discrepancy between what they are showing as the scores and what we have produced. So we wanted to make sure that we went back to a consistent source of data. And so that's what I meant by there. That may have been part of the discrepancy because last year, I'm not quite sure how that was pulled. I believe it was probably pulled locally, but I think DataQuest really gives us solid, consistent source of data.
And then two super quick, I promise.
Of course.
The AP pass rate goal in 2023-24, you indicated as 100% pass. That's very ambitious. I would only want to say I would be careful that we do not make that so prioritized that we reduce access for our students who may want to take it and maybe might be challenged to pass the AP. I know that that's always the tension in wanting to make sure our students take it, that they're going to be successful. But I don't want that to become a barrier then for a student to be able to have opportunity to take those courses.
Agreed. Yes. And I will say, have you met our Lcap Educational Partners Committee? They set the bar high, which is great. And you'll see that 100% reflected across many of the metrics identified in the Lcap. But yes, that is a good source of feedback that I will take back to next year's committee.
And then my last question, can you just explain why 12.6 CTE completion? I know that it was 2.6 prior, and then I guess it would be a 10% increase would be the goal for 23-24. It sounds like a low number, but I'm assuming that there's an explanation behind that.
Which one are you looking at?
So
I'm sorry,
I'm
Ms.
looking
Chan.
at the actual draft of the LCAP. And
Yes. So initially, our baseline showed 7.7% completion rate. When CDE data was published, they published a 2.6 completion rate. So again, going back to a consistent sort of data retrieval. So we created our new baseline being 2.6. 2 years out, the committee recommended that we see a 5% growth. So 5% this year and 5% next year would lead us to that 12.6%.
so that's 12.6% of our student body would complete CTE, or is that 12.6 of completion?
Completion.
That sounds not impressive. What does that number mean exactly?
That means that 12% of the students who are in the CTE pathway are actually completing that pathway. And so they see it from beginning to end.
And what might impede them then from completing it?
Loss of interest. Some students may decide they don't want to complete that pathway. They choose to take other courses that they're interested in. There are many reasons, but I can't pinpoint the exact reason, but it's the main one is probably loss of interest in that pathway.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just have one, I look at your 20 to 21, where wellness center referral, you have a case 199, so 92 get a referral. So it's almost 46%, so close to 50, mean every two have one need a referral. Yeah, so for your information, I just got the report from the CSC Health. So they have a funding, so they will give you the AP to the counselor APP. So that will help in efficiently, for the triage or referral. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we are
You already got the information.
I did from
So
Nina.
Nina, yeah, report to me. Yeah.
Yes, and we are extremely grateful for that partnership
Yeah.
with the Chinese Service Center. I
Yeah.
know that our Wellness Center coordinator at the high school has communicated and partnered with the China Service Center. And they also partner very closely with Care Solis.
Right.
So our partnerships, community-based and professional-based, are rigorous and they're lofty. And we're extremely grateful to have those partnerships to best support our students and staff, actually.
So we can talk about that issue later. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the 13C 2022 to 23 proposed district budget. Dr. Michael Lin.
Good evening, School Board Clerk Chan, members of the San Marino Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and executive team. Tonight's presentation of the 22-23 proposed district budget is presented as an information item. At our next regularly scheduled board meeting, the budget will be brought before you again for adoption. As a quick update, yesterday, the legislature approved the state budget in the form of SB 154 with limited debate, which is really good news. The plan represents the legislature's approach to the upcoming fiscal year and fulfills the legislature's constitutional obligation to approve a spending plan before June 15th. The plan approved by both houses, however, does not represent any agreement between the two houses and Governor Newsom. Once Governor Newsom receives the budget bill, he will have 12 days to sign or veto the bill. It is between now and this 12-day deadline that negotiations will intensify, as there still appears to be significant differences between the governor's and the legislature's spending plans. With that said, let's recap on the governor's May revision. This button, right?
Yes,
There
you
we
have to
go.
point it that way.
And here's a quick recap of what was presented to the board on May 24th, although the governor's May revision provides a 6.56% statutory COLA. The bulk of the governor's package is in one-time funds. The proposal also increases investments to the state school facility program, funding for deferred maintenance, and funding to support the new universal meals program. Also, SB 751 has been triggered and prohibits school districts from having a combined assigned and unassigned reserve in excess of 10%. Towards the end of this presentation, I'll provide an informational item about ways in which school districts can commit funds to comply with SB 751, also the reserve cap of 10%. Let's see, next slide. Okay, School Services of California gets credit for this. They created a very good visual on LCFF funding factors and where the 6.56% COLA gets applied. The COLA is applied to per student funding and not total funding. Total funding includes all of the tiers we see in this pyramid above that base. Also, we estimate getting about $840,000 in the form of a supplemental grant to our unduplicated count. At the very top of this pyramid is the concentration grant. Our district has fewer than 17% unduplicated pupil percentage and is well below the 55% UPP needed to qualify for any concentration grant funding. Okay, next we're looking at at increases to our pension obligations, Calstrs and Calpers. These are respectively the pension plans for certificated and classified employees. Calstrs for our teachers and certificated staff are increasing from 16.92% to 19.10% or 19.1%, a nominal difference of 2.18% increase, which if we compare apples with apples, that is an effective increase of over 12% absorbed by the district. Now, likewise, Calstrs for our classified support staff Calpers for our classified support staff are increasing from 22.91% to 25.37%, a nominal increase of 2.46%. That has an effective increase of over 10% absorbed by the district. Now, what I mean by effective percent increase in pension costs is the percentage increase calculated from the previous year when increased cost amounts are divided by the last year's cost amounts. And that's the standard conversion factor we use to compare apples with apples. As seen in the attached documents of this informational item, along with declining enrollment, the increase in pension costs is one of the main reasons we are looking at deficit spending for the 22-23 fiscal school year. Later on, I'm going to have another slide to talk about the pension cost amounts. Next slide. Factoring in the 6.56% increase in COLA, we're looking at a decrease of over $522,000 in LCFF funding due to declining enrollment. Enrollment was calculated based on the current law and not on the governor's proposal for a 3-year average, because the governor's proposal is still in proposal form. We cannot use that as a basis right now. The district is also incurring increases in health benefit premiums and step and column salary adjustments. There's also an increase in unemployment insurance costs. As mentioned earlier, we're seeing effective increases in both Calstrs and Calpers. Okay, here's a chart where a table looking at grade span adjustments. This is revenue. We get funded differently in each grade level. For example, TK through 3rd, and grades 9 through 12 each get their additional funding per ADA. Unfortunately, grades 4 through 8 only get their base grant. They don't get any additional grade span adjustments. We also applied some key revenue assumptions in developing the proposed budget. We're fortunate to have a schools foundation that has consistently donated $2 million each year. We're also very grateful to our community for supporting the 2 parcel taxes. The negative $522,000 in LCFF funding is based on, again, a decrease of 219 funded ADA, average daily attendance, from the previous year. If the governor's proposal on a 3-year averaging for ADA gets passed by the legislature, we will then revise these assumptions and redo the budget during the 45-day revision period following the budget's adoption. Okay, here are the projected expenditures for the next year and 2 years after that. Expenses cover salaries, employee benefits, materials and supplies, operating expenditures, equipment, and other outgo. There's a big decline in certificated salaries from the estimated actuals of 2021-22, as we have spent a large portion of those one-time funds. Thank you to Dr. Richter and Dr. Choi for creating wonderful programs for our students, as well as purchasing materials during COVID. Similarly, there is a large decline in books, materials, and supplies, as we have also spent large portions of those one-time funds, mostly in materials.
So would it be fair to say that the movement between what we see in actuals for 2021, higher numbers, than the ones that we're proposing for 2022, is it 100% related to one-time funds, or is it retirements where they're being backfilled with people that are somewhat maybe less expensive? Is it both, or is it just like 90%?
A large portion of the decline in revenues is because we spent the money, one-time funds. And you're going to see there's a printout which I provided of attachment 1, which is readily available online as well, that we posted on a board agenda.
So I recall that, but what I'm trying to just kind of, like because one-time funds are included, it's just sort of hard to see like the regular trend.
Right.
Because it's the one-time funds you wouldn't use necessarily. I mean, it's not really comparative since you don't get it again, right? So it's like hard to kind of see how our expenses are changing because that's in there. So I mean, maybe at some point we can kind of just talk about that, but I get the one-time funds and that you have to include them.
But I do know that there has been savings due to attrition and reorganization of the district office that has been quite substantial as well. So that's in there, but I think Dr. Lynn is absolutely right that the majority of what you're seeing is related to the one-time monies. We did have savings during the pandemic, by the way, in utility costs, in maintenance costs. There's a whole variety of reasons why. We have spent less in 21-22 than we did in 2021. And actually, we will continue to spend more because those costs are going to continue to go up, particularly because of inflation. But there is savings due to attrition, and there will be savings realized in 22-23 because of attrition.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, one of the things I think we need to sort of think about is, you have the declining enrollment, right? So there's right sizing associated with that. So that's sort of one series of numbers. And then, certainly retirements, or maybe not, the fact that there aren't retirements could also be a fact that would, kind of play into it. The COVID, sort of expense savings, utilities, that kind of thing. I also know you had some increased expenses too, right? So it's sort of like how you look at the, how they offset each other. And then like we were talking not too long ago, now we have everybody with some sort of tablet or something. Those are very costly, right? And, it's a great thing. Honestly, that was a vision even when I was on the board, is that we were doing that. But we honestly could never reconcile the replacement cost and how that would be funded. And so you now have that built in here too, without the plan for replacement, right? So we kind of just need to understand how that's going to look. Sure.
So this slide is an aggregate, but if we just take the two right columns, just hide them, make them disappear, take the two left columns, do a difference, right? You're going to see certificated salaries decrease by over $1 million. That's because we are spending those one-time funds on the counselors, on the one-time uses. And the other big one is the books and supplies. It's not so much books, it's materials. When we really delve deep into the MYP, the multi-year projections, you're going to see that it's mostly materials, COVID, materials that we've
Like
spent.
Safety materials,
Safety
or
materials,
like
yes.
mask and that kind of stuff.
Signage.
Mhm.
Yes, we spent a lot of it. Anything that we could carry, expend using one-time funds, categorical funds, we do that first. Anything that's unrestricted that we can carry over, we save that.
So $1.2 million.
Yeah,
Is that sort of
right.
supplies for COVID, $1.2 million?
Yes.
That's
And
a pretty big number.
yes, and we have details on this in those attachments.
Okay.
Dr. Lin, look at the employee benefit. So look like we budgeted 3% increase, right? Is too low?
The employee benefits is an aggregate number of statutory benefits as well as health and welfare. We're also looking at, as Dr. Delatorre mentioned earlier, attrition. So that is an aggregate number that really, we have to disaggregate that into details, and it is available in attachment 1.
Yeah, because if 24 to 25 actually decrease a little bit
Yes.
from the 23 to 24.
Primarily because Calstrs is remaining at 19.1% steady, no change. After the jump for this next fiscal year, Calpers for classified is dropping slightly, but hovering around 25%. And that has a big factor in that. Yes.
Okay.
All right, next item. What slide am I on? Let's see. This is the one with the keyboard. Okay, so again, this is what I was talking about, exactly what your question was. You see that Calstrs 19.1% steady with a big jump to this coming year, right? But after that, the 2 out years, 19.1 steady. Calpers, big jump, 22.91% to 25.37%. We take the difference, we're like, wait, that's less than the COLA of 6.56%, but there's an effective percentage increase. And the way you calculate that is you take the nominal amount, the cost, right? The actual dollars, and then do a percentage division, a division to calculate the percentage. And for Calpers, it's over 10%. For Calstrs is over 12%. It's a simple mathematical conversion. Anybody who likes chemistry, do conversion factors, you convert moles into grams and et cetera, So this is the nominal difference is misleading, but we'll have to look at the effective difference that impacts how the district is going to absorb those costs. And there's another slide later. Actually, it's this slide that you're going to see the actual amount that we're going to absorb for next year is $219,000 $320. That's the projected amount that we're gonna eat. Because the governor didn't offer a proposal on addressing the Calstrs. Okay, next one. Okay, this one. We have two major contributions from the general fund. One is special education in the amount of roughly $4.8 million each year. And this is after we bring in revenues from the federal government in IDEA funds, as well as AB 602 SELPA funds. We add all that together and then we spend and we need more money. And so that money you're going to see in the NYP multi-year projection, we need a transfer from general fund of $4.8 million into special education. Similarly, maintenance operations is also in requirement of a contribution from general fund in the amount of $1.3 million per year. And that is consistent, we see in the next 3 years. And contributions happen when we bring in less than we spend in order to maintain the services. And this has nothing to do with inefficiencies. It has a lot to do with unfunded mandates and also deteriorating facilities. And so those are the two factors that we need to
So
consider.
the unfunded mandates, the first one, contribution to special ed. And so, I think what I heard you say is, so the 4.8, 4.7, kind of across there, that's already net of what we actually get. So this is the portion of our budget that we then need to add to whatever we've gotten from federal funds, essentially. right?
Exactly. Thank you for mentioning that point. IDEA promised funding, right? Because that legislation is a mandate. We get 10% of the 40% promised.
Mhm.
And so, yes, you're going to see it in the, the details in attachment 1 that the federal government is increasing the funding one time, $100,000. But that doesn't help the cause. Well, we will take it anyway, right? And there's also one-time additional fund for special education in the amount of special education mental health services in the amount of $180,000.
So that was true when I was here the first time, right? So, that's been a long time, right? And I know that our costs continue to go up. And obviously, if you're just getting an incremental $100,000 this year, clearly the unfunded mandate isn't, it's like that delta is just getting bigger and bigger, right? And there's no end in sight for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And another interesting fact is that School Services of California has studied extensively the fact that overall in the state of California, we are declining in enrollment in terms of the gen ed population, but we
The
are
what population?
general education
One
student
second. Oh,
population.
okay. I thought we were like X and
No, no, no,
millennial.
no, no, no. We'll get into that later. But we are increasing our special education enrollment, and it is far more expensive to educate a special education student than it is a gen ed student. That's just a fact. And so our costs are going up while our revenues are going down. And that's just a fun fact.
That's a
for us to
really,
know.
that's a, like, as we're talking about student population, that's a good point, right?
Mhm.
If you want your special ed child to get the very best education possible, really the public school system is the way to do that. It's very good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there is, sort of a bias for education for special ed students in public schools.
Mhm.
So I think that's something we should sort of kind of understand is how that percentage works for us, because it definitely sort of goes back to, honestly, the cost you had carrying over didn't move that much from year to year. So, that almost just looks like just sort of natural cost of, living kind of increase there. But we could have the same issue as just an increasing percentage of our population.
So Mike, as we have these assumptions, we're making these assumptions and we're anticipating, the STRS, the PERS, and then the growing costs of benefits, supplies, because things are going to cost more. And then our encroachment of special ed costs in our general funds. What are some things? I know this is a loaded question. You're probably going to kill me later, but what are some things that we're going to look at in terms of filling some of the gaps. Jeannie put it quite frankly, the gap is getting wider. And so what are we doing? Because our promise to our community is, you know, second to none education, the best we can deliver at all costs. We will do this. So where is it coming out of if we are doing all this? Like, I don't know where you're getting it from. So.
Yeah, so we do have, let me see if I can answer this. Now, we do have the carryover amount, which is required is a 3%.
But
Well,
the one-time money is not coming back, right?
no, the one-time monies is not coming back. That is very true. And, you know, the governor with his May proposal, May revision has allocated, you know, as proposed, the bulk of his plan package in one-time funds.
Okay.
So that's the trend we're seeing, because there is also not just the risk of inflation, but there's also the risk of a recession coming up. So I would say the right answer is we're looking at building capacity. We're looking at instructional programs through MTSS UDL frameworks, where we can achieve a lot of the needs of the child within the educational context, bearing in mind that 22% of our costs are currently spent in special education.
Right, but even if we decrease the over-identification of special ed, as our general ed population declines, the student enrollment declines, and the costs and the numbers in special ed increase, there is only so much UDL, MTSS that can provide for specific areas that we need to address. So when we're looking at the performance of EL students, special ed students, underperforming students, and when we're looking at all that, how are we going to look at how we're spending our money? Like, how are we prioritizing what we're spending to address those needs? And I'm going to bring it back to what Jeannie said earlier when Jason and Carlos was presenting. You know, we're going to live in this area where we're looking at where the kids are going. How are we preparing the kids? And so in that, what are the things that we can do? I told you I was going to ask you this question, right? When he got the job, I said, Mike, I want you to find the money and show us what we're going to do.
And some, right?
Yeah. So he like stays up late at night thinking about this. Oh, Shelley's going to ask me. I know it, you know. So anyway, so Mike, I'm going to let you talk instead of me.
Yeah. Today, Dr. Richter and I, we went to Siberia to see if we could find anything. And it was quite interesting. I was able to find some cobwebs and spiders, and also a binder dated 1926 or something.
1929,
29. There we go.
What from 1920?
a binder that had receipts and invoices from handwritten.
How
Nice.
awesome is that?
It was really neat.
And typed up too.
Don't lose that. We're gonna
So
wanna keep
the right answer is, and it is the accurate answer, and I've combed through this in the last 14 days. When I first got this position, there's very little wiggle room because this is all transparent. There's no hiding. We can't hide. I mean, I was in Siberia, couldn't find anything. Right. So you're gonna see that. You're going to see aggregate numbers like this, and you're going to see details, and the details are publicly available. And we have to be very transparent about this and present the accurate numbers. There are no money that we're hiding. We cannot, and nobody was hiding. And I'm not an auditor, but I was able to look in it. I'm like, holy cow, we are really bone thin.
I do think it is important to go back to what Dr. Lin expressed in terms of the supports that we are putting in place that we did not previously have 3 to 4 years ago, which is multi-tiered systems of support, positive behavioral interventions and support. I think that those frameworks are really designed to not necessarily address over identification, but be able to provide the supports that students need within the general education environment, because all of our general education teachers are being trained in those frameworks. And so I think that there is a
a very comprehensive approach that is being applied that was not applied in the past that I think will in fact be effective in addressing this issue and really helping to manage it going forward. In addition to that, there's maintenance of effort, which requires that school districts spend more the following year than they did the prior year. And that applies to both maintenance and operations and special education. So that's a challenge for school districts as well, especially when you're declining in enrollment and you're trying to make some adjustments to staffing. Maybe you were overstaffed and you're trying to right size, which would lead to saving money, but the law doesn't really allow that because they're afraid that we're going to allocate our resources to a different area, and they really want us to be spending our money in those two areas. So that's just something for you to know, but we really are, as a school district, coming together as a leadership team, including our principals, to try and find ways to be able to more effectively manage the amount that we're spending in special education. Because you said 22%, and I remember, the prior year it was like 20%. So the percentage is going up, and 20% of our entire, budget is a big number for special education in a small school district like San Marino. So we have been working really hard on that. And I appreciate the question because I think it's important to talk about the fact that we are doing things and we can always do more, and we will look for the areas where we can do more.
Yep. Okay. And one area we can, and we have been doing, is we're looking at one-time restricted dollars or just restricted dollars in general and see if it's appropriate to spend that money first, as opposed to constantly dipping into general fund, because general fund has more flexibilities. Restricted funds by its naming is more restricted. And so Vanjie right there, our director of fiscal services, she is very creative. We constantly consult with each other and we look at the CDE web pages to look for, okay, can we do this? Can we apply, these restricted funds and apply them and use them accordingly?
And we're always searching for grants.
Can I bring up an elephant in the room that I'm betting Ms. Caldwell is probably looking at with me? There's the COP repayment towards Barth, which I know we haven't started talking about this one yet, but when we talk about where's the money, I'm just going to say it. I mean, our bond repayments end in 2025, and we keep dancing around this question of whether or not we're going to go out for a bond again and what that number might be. And so if we do that, it does not have to become a new tax upon the community. It would be in effect an extension of the taxes that we had if we kept ourselves restricted in terms of our numbers and whatever. And I know Keaton always does that and comes and gives us all those numbers. I'm not even talking about the numbers, but when I look at that COP repayment number of $1.5 million, when I look at the maintenance of effort, which I think was that maintenance of not maintenance of effort, sorry, maintenance of
operations.
Regular maintenance.
Every day.
Too many words.
The plate going, yeah.
Yeah, but that's $1.3 million. I mean, right there, that's almost $2 million per year freed up to help
Well,
address.
that's not going to go away though.
Right.
1.3 you'd have, it's probably not enough,
No,
right?
well, I mean, my point being that if we're looking at a bond, some of the maintenance issues can be addressed with bond monies. And like restricted dollar, and so this principle of using restricted dollars first, that essentially becomes a possible scenario for us to use restricted bond dollars to address issues that we have to address, like the COP repayment, or just paying the entire thing off altogether, whatever that ends up looking like. So, I mean, I know none of us want to talk about something that the community may not want to hear about yet, but I feel like it's the elephant in the room.
I think it's inevitable that that discussion will need to take place sooner rather than later, quite frankly, because we're going to have to make that decision as to whether or not we're going to spend one-time monies on paying that COP balance down to get it off the books, or go back to the original plan. The original plan was that we would go out for a bond, pass a bond, and pay that off.
And
I am sorry, I just feel compelled to talk about that. So
One of the biggest things that's not in here is the deferred maintenance obligation that you would typically see in an annual budget, right? And I mean, that's clearly no fault of anyone in here. It's just not what schools do. And that's kind of where our problem is, you know, I mean, we really need to sort of think about what that looks like. And in a district like ours, where the school sites you know, are old. They've been well maintained. Many have been renovated. And so there are improvements, but none are fully renovated, you know? So like when we were looking at the bond before, every roof needs replacing, every air conditioning system needs replacing. And that right there is enormous money for our district. We don't even have enough in our one-time money to do any of that. Right? Nothing's there. So we are definitely living on borrowed time. There's just no question about that. And there is, you know, I just made myself a little note because you highlighted in your colorful pyramid that there was state money that is now being put into some sort of deferred maintenance thing. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. I'd like to know how much. I know it's nothing, right? It's like a drop in the bucket.
Well,
So I don't,
sorry, can I just say something real quick? So we did get monies from the state one time, and this is related to COVID-19 to improve the air quality in our classrooms. So we are actually going to provide 2 new HVAC systems for the oldest systems that we have in our district, which are Valentine and Huntington, correct?
which is great. And it fully funds that. You
Yes.
didn't have to shortchange what you were going to put in there.
We're
No,
looking,
and that was, I mean, a gift that we were not expecting, right? But it does tie into the state's desire to improve air quality. Having said that, as you just mentioned, these systems are exceedingly expensive, and we do not have the money to do Carver and the high school. And as you well know, you know, we have facilities at the high school that aren't air conditioned at all. And that is not always a comfortable position for students to be in. So there are definite needs. You know, when was the last time we painted? You know, we have all sorts. I could give you a laundry list.
I
of
have
our
them.
needs.
Oh, you have them.
So you know.
I remember.
She was
I
on the
mean, you know,
study.
so the reality was, you know, 2 years ago, the deferred maintenance that just had to be done was $140 million. That was what the number was. And that was 2 years ago. The difference between the 140 and the 200 that we recommended is really because, I mean, we just quite frankly, as a committee, did not believe that it made sense to go out for a potential 30-year bond to pay for maintenance that you would need to do again before you paid off the bond. I mean, you needed to somehow get better. And so the 60 million was really dedicated to improving our facilities in a way that we were offering, you know, an even higher level education. And yeah, quite frankly, I was terribly disappointed that that didn't get passed. And, you know, I believe that there was too much friction within the board, which, you know, you all know, I've said this, the board, and in particular, the board member who was on our committee actually voted for the $200 million and then went out and talked against it. And that is not helpful at all. And that we really need to fix. And I would highly recommend we address that sooner rather than later.
But by the way, actually, this weekend, I also heard the story from the PCC president, you know. So I trying to verify. So they are going to plan to have a bond in the November election. So I asked him how much, and they suddenly said, okay, we are still planning. Yeah. So mean they are doing before we initiate another bond again.
Well, they're big numbers, right? I mean, I think, you know, when you are a place like PCC or, you know, even here, the amount of square footage, the amount of, you know, sort of site space, whatever it is you want to look at. I mean, these are big places. So this isn't like rebuilding your kitchen at home, right? I mean, this is big stuff and it costs a lot of money.
Right.
And on top of that, you have to do it inside the state's requirements,
Right.
which just at a minimum doubles the cost it would take you or me to redo our own kitchen,
Very
right?
true.
I mean, it's just, that's kind of how, I mean, those are the rules we live in. So,
Yep.
sorry.
Yep. Oh, no, I just want to hop on what Dr. Delatorre was mentioning about the ESSER 3 funds. And it's talking about, ventilation is so important. I mean, it is important during COVID,
Sure.
right? And so we very creatively took that ventilation, HVAC.
That's brilliant.
See
Right.
that $900,000,
job.
and you're gonna see that in the MYP, and it's all legit. And we have to
Yep.
spend it by September 30th of 2024.
Mhm.
So there are deadlines to these restricted funds, but we're doing it very creatively. So now just want the public to know that if they want to delve in, it's all public. This is all public information.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think the district has always been very good. I mean, we don't get a lot of extras from, the
Right.
state in general. We just never have. But, in many ways, that sort of makes you not even want to look because you're like, well, that's never going to apply to us, right? But I have always found this district to be extraordinary at finding the creative way that those sort of not districts, like more needier district kind of thing, that we are really good at finding a way to get what we can. So great job.
So
Okay.
Dr. Dean,
Yes.
you continue or you
Yes.
finish it?
Yeah, I'll continue.
Okay,
This
step
is a
one.
really important informational item here that's followed by a resolution later in item 15. In our proposed budget, you will see that we have a projected ending balance of $13 million. $13 million is a lot of money, but of this $13 million, $4 million are in site funds. We cannot touch site funds. They have a lot of carryovers. Some of it is restricted. These are money that the sites have raised through donations. $13 million minus $4 million, okay? For the remaining $8 million, so we also have a 3% reserve, $1.3 million. So 13 minus 4 minus 1.3, right? The remaining $8 million that are assigned and unassigned. So assigned and assigned. Now, let me mention, of the 4 listed up there, proposed later on for a resolution, you're going to see the COP repayment mentioned earlier. That's already assigned. Our board has already assigned that amount. Okay. If we leave it assigned, the 10% cap counts. That counts towards the 10% cap. There's a safety mechanism that allows us to not have a count, and that's called the committing. If we commit that assigned amount, it becomes not part of
Part
the
of the
equation.
10% calculation.
The other 3, cash flow, fiscal stabilization, declining enrollment, they are unassigned, but we can move it into committed, and I'll explain more about this. So again, for the remaining $8 million that are assigned and unassigned, we need to comply with the 10% cap on reserves in accordance with SB 751. Now we're looking at committing $2 million for cash flow to provide the district with a higher rating from the credit rating agencies and lower interest rates. Now, the point about, where's the money, right? We have to sometimes borrow money in order to make payroll. If there's money, we don't even need to borrow money, but we have to borrow money. So that's true.
Borrow it from ourselves, right?
No, in the past,
No.
though,
This is-
we've done
it's the
trans
Okay.
because of cash flow purposes. And there was a time when our funding was being deferred by the state. And so we had to borrow money through a tran, which had to be paid back in a very short period of time. And yes, we have borrowed from ourselves also when we have money, but when we don't have money, we have to do the tran. And go ahead. I mean, it's just
There's,
we have so many needs
right.
to speak of.
And of course, when we borrow, there's
I'm
interest,
sorry, can I ask a
interest
question?
involved. That cash flow fund helps us with lowering that interest rate.
Right.
And this will also allow the district, as Dr. Delatorre mentioned, the ability to reduce the need for temporary borrowing should the local, state, and or federal funding be delayed. And that has happened in history. And with the recession that we're anticipating, this may happen again. So this is a proposal for the resolution later. A $2 million
Excuse
will
me,
also give us
hello?
less than 2.5 additional weeks, 2.5 additional weeks of time buffer. And we have a monthly expenditure of $3.7 million. We also
you hear me?
propose committing the already assigned $1.5 million in COP payments. It's assigned, let's make it committed. Also committing the fiscal stabilization fund of $2 million will allow the district to reduce the severity of inflation in materials and pension costs and potential layoffs in the event of a recession. Finally, committing the declining enrollment fund of $2.5 million will allow the district to buffer against declining enrollment and provide the district additional time to make adjustments to programs and staffing. Now, all this is currently for your information. Resolution number 16 will be presented in agenda 15F for board adoption. And the proposed board resolution in Agenda 15F contains details about each of these committed funds. So for the public who's just listening to this, if you want to read up on it, it is available online. The Board of Education, of course, reserves the right to modify and modify any committed funds in the future by resolution as the need arises. Okay, let's see, next slide.
Hello? Hello?
Who wants to talk?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I've I've been trying to cut in. Can we go back to the prior slide, please?
Yes.
Okay, the cash flow, the COP repayment, the fiscal stabilization and declining enrollment, are these additional amounts to what's previously been approved by the board, or are these the amounts that were previously approved by the board?
Previously.
These are
Same.
assigned and unassigned funds from the ending balance.
So these are what we previously voted on
Yes.
months ago, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Can you explain the difference between assigned and committed?
So
Legal.
board policy 3100 explains it in details. So when you assign it, it counts towards the reserve cap. It's part of the reserve. When you commit it for a specific purpose, you need a resolution. Okay, a formal resolution. But the board isn't locked into that. The board could pass another resolution to uncommitted.
So this is our way of trying to get around the reserve.
Yes.
So we're essentially repeating what we did prior back in when we looked at this budget, and now we're just doing it in such a way as to save ourselves from the reserve cap.
Yes.
Right.
But I
Okay,
will
so can I ask another
just
question,
say-
please?
Oh, let Mike finish. Yeah.
Okay, so there was money that was received from the state with regard to state matching funds for the Barth Athletics Complex. Is that shown in here, or where has that money gone?
No, that is the matching fund. And I can talk about that later as well. We have the COP repayment portion. Let me see, it is. The matching fund is 2.6 million, if I remember correctly.
And that was originally intended to reimburse the school district for its contribution to the Barth Athletics Complex that was taken out of our general fund. And so we were going to reimburse ourselves, and I think we thought it was going to be $2 million. It ended up being $2.6 million. And so that is in the general fund currently, right? Banshee, no, where is it?
In Fund 30.
Fund 35, I'm sorry. So it is currently sitting in Fund 35, and it's not here on the committed and assigned balance projections, but it will be addressed later on.
Is Fund 35 a reserve account?
I'm sorry.
That would fall, is Fund 35, where that $2.6 million for the Barth Athletics matching funds from the state, is that Fund 35 account considered a reserve account for purposes of the 10% reserve cap?
No.
No, it is a restricted amount that we can use towards the principal of the COP, but not the interest.
So we want to leave it there then,
Right.
so that it doesn't trigger any reserve caps too,
There are
right?
two ways you could pay down the COP and have a lower COP interest, or use it for modernization to then reduce the M&O cost.
But we want to keep it in Fund 35 so that it doesn't end up getting piled
Right,
into the
right.
reserve.
Right, so that part is not part, right, so it's not in the $13 million that's ending balance to the beginning balance of next year. It is part of the school facility program grant reimbursement.
So Michael, if the money that's sitting in this Fund 35, you can only use for principal pay down and not interest.
That's correct,
The $1.5 million is debt service, is it
That's
not?
debt
That's
service.
interest.
that's interest.
So you have to do both.
So debt service, the board assigned this previously $1.5 million for 3 years to cover 3 years of debt service. And the next year's debt service payment is $468,500 for the 22-23 school year.
So the $1.5 million is effectively a reserve too against the interest component.
That's correct. The board, once assigned, $1.5 million, you could apply it to either the principal or the interest. Now, the reimbursement we got, the $2.6 million, that's only towards principal, not towards interest.
And so, you know, since it has to go to principal and it will ultimately go to principal, are we holding it in hopes we're going to get a bond to cover it?
Well,
Okay.
well, you know what,
Thinking through that logic.
you know, since we have a COP, so the donor was very generous and continue to renew one more time to
Absolutely.
pay the debt service. Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
this year is
The donor contributed up to $2 million.
yeah.
And then the district would, the idea again, going back to our original plan, we're going to have this wonderful, benevolent, generous donor make that COP payment for us up to $2 million, but we were going to pass a bond to unencumber that debt, and we would just move forward. That didn't happen. So the donor met the $2 million mark. And so starting this year, we're going to, and when I say this year, 22, 23, right? We are going to have to make our own payment. So previously, this was not part of our budget because the payment was being made by.
Yeah,
a
this
donor.
year is the first time we have to
Yes,
pay.
right.
Because before he trying to help.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
annually it's up to $500,000 a year. And so we thought it would be prudent to set aside up to 3 years worth of payment in order to determine whether or not we could pass a bond during that time and resolve the issue.
What is the current balance on the principal?
It's a little, it's over $6 million.
Yeah, $6 million, right.
So if you took that 2.6 million and you took, if we went back a slide again,
Sorry.
if we took the 2.6 million and we took the 1.5 million, you could bring a $6 million principal down to $2 million.
2.6 million. Yeah, and the thing is, you know, I'm looking at this like a mortgage, right? It has to be recalculated. I mean, we cannot do a direct proportional decrease in interest payment. And I tried it. I'm like, okay, I don't have the equations. COP is a different animal than a mortgage.
Well, I do.
Is it more like a line of- is it- is it more-
Mortgage banker.
But it's not a mortgage, right? I mean, what you have
Is
is
it more like a line of credit?
Right.
Right, that's right.
So when there's less borrowed, there's a smaller payment?
Interest.
And less
If,
interest.
if this thing
And
matures,
so if you've got a $6 million balance and that's producing a $500,000 a year payment, and you decrease it to $2 million balance, does that decrease the payment to approximately 1/3 of the $500,000 payment?
That's what we're saying. We don't have the.
Yeah,
formula.
it's not a direct proportional calculation because
But it
I,
would be a substantial savings
would be.
on the interest component because clearly the interest accrues, you know, monthly, right? I mean, you'd have to look at the loan documents to figure out what you're allowed to do and what you're not. And I think, Mike, where you're also headed is aside from the interest, usually with, you know, so say a 50% principal reduction, you get to re-amortize as well. And that also makes a difference. But I mean, again, it just depends on the terms of the commercial loan. I think the issue though, and as I understand it is, you know, because I mean, what Mike's describing makes a lot of sense. And so if you didn't know this other fact, which is if we spend it, we can't reimburse ourselves. And so the logic for holding it is it provides a future buffer for the district for unknown things. If you think you can get the bond handled, bond passed, to be able to handle what it's supposed to handle, which are these capital expenditures, which is exactly what that is. I just think you do have to have a window.
You know, I would like to suggest just for the COP issue to have a more understanding, you know, that's right now set aside, and then we have a maybe have a special study section. Yeah. So keep going. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I got to bring in one more thing. So declining enrollment. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, the one thing that affects us more than anything is declining enrollment. When I was here before, our numbers for the district, student wise were 3,000 to 3,200. We ultimately believed that that was the sweet spot, like every graduating class should be at least 300, stuff like that. And it's not just because we wanted the ADA money. It's not what the issue was. It's that number of students that allowed us to offer the best program possible for all students. And I think we really have to look at that. Obviously I spent a little time with you yesterday and, we're about 550 students off that 3,200 number, right? I mean, I think that when we look at our declining enrollment, there's declining, and then then there's this line that we really need to determine where it is, but you're reaching the point of concern, like, can the district survive? And I think we're getting close, really close, because you right now have this benefit. You have, like never in the whole time I was ever here did we have money we could apply to anything like this. That never happened. And you're not going to have it long, right? Because you just can't build it. And as soon as that's gone, there's a huge problem. And so the only thing for me that makes sense to be doing this is to use that time to figure out how to fix the problem.
Yep.
So I think that, I know we may have a very big agenda on the 28th, but I think we need to start as soon as possible. So if we could really dive into the whole declining enrollment thing and just sort of look at where that is, I was very heartened to see the increase in TK and K. That's awesome. Those kids, I hope we carry all the way through. I had a conversation with someone today. We have a new family moving to the district. They've got 2 children in high school. I'm like, check, but it's a long ways between that too. And where we need to be. So I think we really have to address that.
I'm gonna quickly put in a shameless plug for the folks watching at home and future viewers. We have enrollment is now open right here.
Thank you.
Click on that link, go to our school district website and enroll your child. Okay, next, so what are the next steps? We have, we will continue to assess and evaluate student enrollment, staffing, program services and budgets. We have a 45-day review after the final budget is adopted. In mid-September, we have the unaudited financial statements presented to the board. In mid-December, we will have another presentation to the board in the form of a first interim report. In mid-January, we're going to present the audited financial statements to the board. And in mid-March, the board will see the second interim report. And next item, we have looking ahead to the 2023-24 budget planning year. From October through December, we will have district leadership budget meetings. From January through March, we'll have the governor's January proposed budget, future year enrollment projections, board budget study sessions, and potential budget savings and reductions. In May, we will have the May revised update. And in June, right now, we have the proposed budget presented to the board. And I've provided the board a printout of attachment 1, which is the 17:11 version. It is publicly posted on the agenda on our district website. The electronic version of this attachment is a searchable document for anyone interested in doing a keyword search for specific budget items discussed today. It looks something like this. This is my version. It's annotated with colors because it looks better that way.
You're
right.
fine things too.
So thank you very much.
Okay,
And that concludes my presentation.
okay, thank you for Dr. Lin. If no question, I would like to go to the agenda 14, communication from the audience regarding the matter on the action item to be made at this time. Eric?
Thank you, Dr. Richter and Dr. Lin for your presentations tonight. They were exceptional and it fueled our robust conversation. And thank you so much for all the work that you put into it.
We're now pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters of the action items on the agenda. If you would like to make a request to speak, press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public request card. 30 seconds remaining. If you would like to make a request to speak regarding matters for action items on the agenda, press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public request card. Time has expired and there are no requests.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, any public comment from the audience in person? Okay, thank you. 15A, football booster lifetime sponsor plaque, Dr. Territory.
Thank you, Board Clerk Chang, members of the Board of Education and executive team. Mr. Kurtenbach has requested that the board consider approving a perpetual plaque that will be attached to our high school property that represents a lifetime sponsor in the amount of $2,500. So if an individual wants to donate up to $2,500 or at least $2,500, they will be eligible to be placed on this plaque, which will be again attached to our district property.
So we have a lot of plaques for the football field.
Yeah.
Like a lot of, a lot of sports plaques in general, right? Is this intended to be for future donors, or are we recognizing some in the past? And if so, how far back do we go?
My understanding is that it's prospective, it is not retroactive, in order to incentivize the donations. And I was not told that it's going back. But he is not here to answer that question. I apologize. So I can find that out, but it's my understanding. Do you know, did he tell you?
I'm reading what we wrote in the WIBM just to
Thank you.
confirm.
I appreciate that.
So while you're
I think it's
looking, so you
perspective.
can read, more leisurely. So you've got like football, right? But I mean, I happen to know there's lots of donations to lots of programs.
Right.
And I also happen to know we now have one big booster group. So I'm like a little, kind of interested about the whole football booster versus like who everyone else is.
Right.
Back to my whole athletics advisory committee thing, this is definitely something that should be in that arena. And I don't want to hold up the football team, but I
Right.
believe we need to, provide for a solution that covers all sports, or even quite frankly, arts and activities, right? So these are parent supporters of these other activities that we believe are crucial to world-class education. And so I think that, a booster lifetime sponsor plaque, wonderful idea. But I think we eliminate the football and offer it to everybody. That's what I would propose. $2,500 buys you a name on the wall.
Did you have additional information, Mrs. Delatorre?
Yes, Superintendent Delatorre, according to Mr. Kurtenbach's board memo, they are planning to have 5 to 10 people qualify for the plaque the first year, which is 22-23. And they anticipate they would have anywhere from 2 to 4 added each subsequent year.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So it is prospective.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that's good because going backwards is really hard.
Right.
And those people were recognized at whatever the process was before, right? But I do think that we should think more broadly than football.
So is that tonight we just do the Titan football booster, right? And then later we can.
Well,
Oh,
I would amend it to say all the sports can do it, and you can vote on that if you want.
okay, can we do that? Or is that I have to put in the agenda first?
Yeah, I agree with Jeannie just because of Title IX and softball and
right.
soccer and other things.
Yes.
We actually, I would warn against just doing football.
So could
I
someone make it?
mean, we can do this just to make it clean, right? We can vote for the football one tonight.
Yeah,
And then if you want to put on the next agenda
Yeah.
to align the other sports and activities groups, and that way you can get, Principal Kurtenbach kind of in the loop about why we're doing that. I think that would be good. And then we can align our vote
Yeah.
at that time.
I think
that work?
this is a good idea. Otherwise, tonight may hear more public comment.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
when I was, you know, here before, when my kids were at the high school, I'd been very sensitive to
Right.
that. And I was a big supporter of football.
Yes.
Football is where it starts. So like, I'm totally, I mean, like your sports teams go like your football team does. So totally support it.
Okay, make a motion. Yeah. And I also need a second.
Wait, can I ask, so are we discussing that in the,
Okay, go ahead.
are we discussing that in the future at the next board meeting, we would expand it out to any sports, any activities, VAPA, any organization on campus, or how broadly are we putting it so that we have recognition across the campus for all the student support?
Athletics, arts, and activities. So if you qualify under any of those three categories, I think then we are consistently applying the same process, the same recognition.
President or Clerk Chang, we need to look at our time and.
Yes, right.
making a
That-
motion
That's the
to
reason you
accept,
see.
Yeah. So-
I understand, and I understand that there's time. Believe me, I'm currently on the East Coast time, so it's currently 1:15 in the morning where I am. But my question is there a problem with us doing that tonight? That we can't just make a motion that it would apply to all arts, activities, and athletics programs?
Well,
I mean, I'd be
think,
happy to make a motion right now.
Well, as a chair, I like to suggest, you know, tonight we just vote for this agenda, yeah. And then I think it's a good suggestion from the Ginny, then the other sports, we come out agenda later.
And
Yeah.
other activities.
We can bring that back.
Yeah.
Just bring the whole
amended.
thing back.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
bring the whole
28.
thing back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but do they need to get, well,
Yeah,
Well,
I
they
think
don't-
weeks
they don't
matter,
need to
right?
get it
I mean,
together.
I'm thinking from the perspective of boosters, I think what probably happened is they've already got a number of people lined up and then they need to start the process of getting that done. So, I think
Well, I'm not opposed.
this feels
to-
like a
yeah.
this feels like it's turning into a bigger thing than what they seem to have already lined up.
We could get Mr. Kurtenbach on the phone if that is helpful for the
I
board.
mean, honestly, I think we could give, I mean, I don't, to answer Mike's question, I don't think there's a problem with our amending what we have here and making, you know, that motion. But having said that, I think there's also a benefit to getting, you know, Principal Kurtenbach involved and, you know, maybe you can come back and do whatever. But I, you know, so kind of where I guess I end up is in the event that is the case that, you know, they just want to collect, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever's going on. Football is the one who thought of it, so they might as well get the benefit of being first. And so if we can do that tonight, what does it matter?
Yeah.
Clearly, our discussion recognizes that we think it needs to be for everyone. So I don't think that we could be unfair in that regard. We're doing it on the 28th.
Yeah.
Do we know if there's some negative with this being pushed back only 2 weeks so that we could have the equal representation for all arts, athletics, and activities across the campus?
I think it's a bigger conversation than what can be done in 2 weeks because that requires reaching out to all of the boosters and everybody's summer break right now because they may not be interested in participating in any of this.
Well, it's
So-
not mandatory. I'm not proposing that we mandatorily make them do plaques. We're saying that it would be open to all of them if they would like to do it. That would be an open invitation to all of our activities and athletics and organizations so that they can also raise money for their organizations.
There's a number of organizations that don't have to put plaques up and they still manage to make donations from their families. So I think it's a bigger conversation
The other-
with all
yeah.
the boosters.
The other question, I guess, will be presented to the board in the form of, you know, where these things get placed,
Right.
right? In the construct of our facilities
Right.
and aesthetics and all of that, because if you're gonna go with the 3As, that could be quite extensive. And we do have a number of parents that donate a considerable amount of money to these programs. So that is another consideration. Mr. Kurtenbach has texted Dr. Richter to inform her that the 28th is fine. So if you want to have an expanded conversation and he can be here to respond to this, and maybe we need somebody from TAB also, maybe who has been involved in these conversations, but we also need to think about the facilities, the placement.
That's a
Yeah.
great point. And I think that would give us time to sort of think through those issues.
Mhm.
Because the other thing we probably should do is put a time period on how long they're up there.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that doesn't often happen with donations, I mean, it makes it like, it's, you know, it really shouldn't be there perpetually. You know, 10 years, maybe 5 years after your kid leaves, whatever, you know, but it's like the wall's gonna fill up.
Yes,
And
very quickly
That's a
here.
very good point.
Very quickly here. Yeah.
Which is a good problem to
Yeah,
have.
it is a good problem to have, but
Okay, so is there anyone?
So we're not going to act on it.
Just so,
So what, yeah, so do you want us to make a motion to?
yeah, so whatever you
Table it.
on this agenda, yeah.
Okay, well, I would be happy to make a motion to discuss 15A, the Football Booster Lifetime Sponsor Plaque, in the context of a high school wide related program at our next board meeting.
Okay, any second?
I second.
Second, okay. Roll call, Mr. Kiraki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Mrs. Cowell,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong, and
Aye.
Mr. Chen, aye. Motion carry. Okay, next go to 15B, reorganization of 2022 officer.
Before we do that, should we extend the time?
Yes, we
Yes.
need to.
Yes,
I move to extend the time for
Half an hour.
half an
So
hour
11.
till 11 PM.
okay. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Kiraki,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Mrs. Cowell,
Aye.
Mrs. Chong,
aye.
Mr. Chen, aye. Motion carry. Okay, let's go back to 15B, reorganization.
So I actually have something to say about that before we get into it. The board is not required to elect a president. Because the way that the board policies are stated in board bylaw 9100, the Board of Education shall hold an annual organization meeting following a regular election of district board members, and as such, that regular annual, sorry, it's getting late. The annual organizational meeting will be taking place at the end of this year, which fulfills our requirement. And so the appointment of president is not required since we will already be having that annual organization meeting. And so board bylaw 9121 already places the clerk as the member who assumes responsibilities of the president in the absence of the president. I do want to raise something though that I had previously pointed out in a board meeting as well as with conversations in writing and verbally, that we do have inconsistencies in our board bylaws that must be addressed. Board bylaw 9100 holds that the board shall elect a president, a vice president, and a clerk from its members. However, while 9121 says that the clerk will assume responsibilities in the absence of the president, 9123, sorry, these are a lot of numbers, I know. 9123 relays the duties of the clerk to quote, serve as presiding officer in the absence of the president and vice president. And if we follow typical Robert's Rules of Order practice, as well as past precedent, the vice president presided over meetings such as what took place on March 16, 2016, when then President Namjack was absent, and minutes seem to reflect that Vice President Chang presided over meetings. I bring this up because one of the primary responsibilities of the board is to develop and adopt policies and bylaws that impact governance and operational efficiency. And to that end, there is an option before the board of two choices to amend board bylaw 9121 to be in accordance with the process stated with a CSBA sample policy, which states when the president resigns or is absent, the vice president shall perform the president's duties. When the vice president and the president are absent, the clerk shall perform the president's duties. And if the board chooses not to pursue amending 9121, then the board should consider amending board bylaws 9100 and 9123 to eliminate the office of the vice president, since there is no corresponding bylaw outlining the role of the vice president, and 9100 and 9123 are inconsistent with 9121. It's something that I have brought up multiple times with both the previous superintendent, and because we were in COVID, it was clearly not a priority, rightly so. We needed to be able to deal with the attention to the schools, and nobody anticipated that we would end up having a position being where we are now with not having a president. But to continue to ignore the issue, to me, it's gotten to the point where I feel I am negligent in my responsibilities of our board policies to correct the inconsistency. So I would move to table the motion to appoint a president to the board until we resolve the inconsistencies of our bylaws.
First of all, can I say something?
Okay.
First of all, after I'm temporary take charge, I'm definitely, I never want to ignore your concern. You know, as you know, we make this agenda without we can finish it, but we are behind. So actually, for tonight, it's not just this agenda. Have another agenda. For, you know, but we did not put in. So I just want any board member understand, you know, when you have a wish list, and we always seriously is a concern, but we also need to know what we can finish, you know, during the regular school board meeting, within maybe the 2 hour or 3 hour. Yeah, so that's yeah. But right now,
Okay.
open to everyone comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I would second the motion.
The motion to clarify the,
To table the,
Yeah.
I
Jane's motion.
was to table the motion to appoint a president to the board
Okay.
until such time as we are able to resolve the inconsistencies of our board bylaws.
So your table mean the clerk temporarily have to continue to serve. But I will charge.
Well, then we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting as to how we're going to have clarification for our bylaws and our governance, so that we really know exactly what we are voting to have people do. Because if we're talking about assigning people to a president, a vice president, and a clerk position, then I think we all need to know that there's no inconsistencies. I think that board member Chan raises a very good point. We have inconsistencies in our bylaws. We have inconsistency in how the governance should take place. And now we're talking about appointing people to those positions that, quite frankly, we don't even know exactly what would happen with the people that, with the positions that we are appointing people in. So this could be resolved at the next meeting with a proper layout of how the governance should take place with our bylaws. So we've got a motion and a second to be
So-
able to do that before we assign people.
I concur that the clarity needs to be there. I guess where I'm not seeing the link is between the, you know, sort of designation of an officer and the clarification, because these board bylaws are for when there's a missing person, not for when you have everyone. So I completely agree that we need to clarify the, inconsistencies, but I also think that it might take a little bit to do it because they're probably, CSBA, someone must have sort of a recommended format for how that works.
They do.
Is that what
Yeah,
you're reading?
that was the option. Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah.
and so in theory, that's what we would do unless we can somehow reconcile why we have the inconsistency. And I don't know how long it would take to do that. So anyway, my point is, I agree that should be an agenda item, but I also agree we should have a full complement of officers. So, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit Switzerland here, but I'm just not sure they're linked. That's my only thing.
And they're not
Well,
necessarily linked. It's just that the president is not, we are not required to elect a president because we have a remedy in place with 9121, which we have been operating under for the last month or so. So it's just, to me, I feel like we keep going down this path of putting a president in place and we don't even have consistencies in our bylaws regarding the role of the president or the
And-
absence of a president.
I think the added point is we have a vice president position, and obviously no disrespect to our current vice president, because it has nothing to do with what she has done or not done. But quite frankly, I don't know what the vice president on this board does. I thought until we had the meeting where Clerk Chang took over in the absence of the president, I thought that the vice president would be taking over. And then I learned at that time that the vice president actually does not take over. The first vice president in the history of vice presidents that I've ever known of that doesn't take over in the absence of a president. So, I mean, if we're talking about assigning a president and a vice president and a clerk, then I'd like to know, what does the vice president do on this board?
And that did come up during our organization meeting, which bleeds into 15C with board committees and representatives, because at that point, it was very clearly discussed, because I wanted to know, if I'm vice president, what does that even mean? And during that December 7th meeting, it was stated the vice president fills in with regard to these particular committee representations, but we just never addressed the issue of anything else that the vice president would step into. So it's something nobody anticipated happening. And so it just was not addressed, given all of the other business that the board needed to deal with, rightly so.
Can I ask you, the next regular meeting, you have a heavy agenda before the end of the June, you have to.
We had talked about agendizing the board policy issue on
Okay.
28th.
So that's the one process, and I want the enrollment issue. Yeah, okay. So anyone to make a comment?
Yeah, fellow board members, I just want to remind you that we need to stay on the agenda, stay on point. And Mrs. Chong can make recommendations, except that if we are going to defer this action, does it affect the running of the school district? Because I don't want to go into long periods where we don't have a president, a VP, like meaning, Mr. Clackey, Mrs. Chong, you've had 2 years on the board. Mr. Clackey's had a year. Their time to have put it on the agenda might have been a different time than today's action item, which is on the agenda. We need to stay on the agenda. And when Mrs. Jack resigned from the board, we did seek counsel regarding how to fill the position, what the roles are. And it was not recommended at the time to do it, to wholesale change policies right away. And as uncomfortable as it feels, the board has been operating for a period of time, making sure that the business of the school district is taken care of, and not necessarily who has rights to what position. So my recommendation is that we stay on the agenda, which is proposed. And if somebody makes a motion to not take action on this, but we need to do it in a consistent matter that addresses what the school district needs to do, because in the last meeting of the academic school year, there's lots to be done because we're not going to have another meeting. And I don't want to go so many months without a president. I mean, if Clerk Chang, wants to assume the position, I want to hear from him, but I also see that we can't change everything right away and start looking at policies when that was not the plan. I mean, we say don't discuss what's not on the agenda, and then now we're discussing, we're going to go into policies, we're going to change that. That's fine. We used to set it up so that cabinet looked at all the policies with board members, and we had a concerted study session where we allotted 3 hours to look at all of the priorities of the policies, not just necessarily one that again defines our role. I mean, I know my role as one member of a 5-member board. So I really want us to stay focused on the agenda and the business at hand. And if you guys want to defer and say we're gonna not take this action item, then the next meeting, we're gonna have to spend a long time because there are some policies I want to look at. So,
I think
we'll,
that sounds great. I think that sounds great. If there are stumbling blocks or gaps to proper governance, then we absolutely should be figuring out the best way to govern the district. And if there's policies that need to be addressed, then absolutely do that. Because the issue is not time. The issue is making sure that we have proper governance. And as far as the way that Board Member Chan framed her motion, she's absolutely addressing what is on the agenda. And frankly, I seconded it because I believe that it was framed in a way that made the most sense. That first we address proper governance and proper procedure and proper structure, and then we have spots that we fill. We don't fill holes with gaps in our structure.
Yeah, Mike, I understand. So right now, just like a discussion. So I think each of you already express your concern, and Mrs. Koya, you already expressed your concern, or you haven't?
Well, my comment just was, I don't see them necessarily as related. I mean, I appreciate Mike's comment about board governance, but, bylaws are certainly a component of governance. I don't debate that. But in this case, the governance is there. There's just a little bit of inconsistency, but it honestly, to me, doesn't have anything to do with the election of officers generally. It's what happens when one of those officers is missing. That's the distinction I draw.
Okay, so I'm the last one to make a comment. Definitely, the Mrs. Chung mentioned about there's not consistency. So that, eventually we need to revisit for the policy. So, but this is the agenda already here. So I'm just follow the rule. So since I have someone make a motion and a second. So right now, let's do the roll call.
what was the motion again? Could you please repeat?
The motion is to, I moved to table the motion regarding the appointment of, regarding the election of the president.
And you have a,
So to table it.
you table, do you have a timeline or when
Well,
you
it would
will revisit
be,
this?
if we revisit it with the amending the bylaws in proper time on the 28th, that would be possible, but it's one of those things we keep kicking down the road, and I brought it up immediately after being elected to the board in 21 with the previous superintendent. I brought it up multiple times, but we were in a pandemic. There were a lot of things to deal with.
No, during the
So-
pandemic, actually, I never heard about your concern. Seriously, yeah. This is after I became the, I temporarily take a charge, and then all the concern come out, yeah.
So in any case, that's my motion was to table the election of the president and have Clerk Chang can continue to operate to assume those duties until we address the inconsistencies. In terms of a timeline, I suppose that would be the 28th, which would be the last meeting for this year.
Well, if this motion including the just indicate the 28 mean that give us a look like a assignment we had to finish it 28. So
that was not my original motion. My motion originally was to simply table the election until the inconsistencies are resolved.
Okay, let's do the roll call. Okay, Mr. Kiraki.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan.
No.
Mrs. Hoya. Mrs. Chung.
Aye.
Mr. Chen. No.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that Jane Chon be placed as president of the board.
Okay, any second? Okay, no second. So is anyone want to come out another motion?
I would make a motion that Joseph Chang be president of the board.
I second.
Well, if I can discuss, my job is here is just make sure I always say the continuity, actually I'm more busy than each of you. When I spend more
Your
time
answer
here,
is no, right?
when I spend more time here, when I go home, I have to do to the midnight for my other organization assignment. So I definitely appreciate. I think my goal for the 21 years is like a EMT. Okay, it's not a hospital administrator. It's an emergency medical technician. Okay, so when there's a need, temporary, I step in. So that's my function. So so I if I can, I decline for this offer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chang, I respect the fact that you work so hard and that you have sacrificed so much. I'd like to make the motion to have Mrs. Caldwell be president.
Any second? Okay, I second. Yeah. Okay, roll call.
Discussion.
Okay.
I have a lot of respect for Ms. Caldwell. I truly do. I think that you're very knowledgeable. I think that you handle things in a very good business-like manner. And I know that you care deeply about this district. My concern is, as I believe was pointed out, that you are very new to the board and that you haven't been on the board for, I'm not sure the number of years, I believe 10 to 12 years. That doesn't mean that you can't be brought up to speed, but we also at the same time have a relatively short period of time until there would be the next election of the president position, from what I understand, if we're keeping that same timeline. So getting up to speed on all of the issues, as opposed to somebody that has been on the board throughout the current existence of all of these issues. Again, I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Ms. Caldwell. I think that you're a very smart, very accomplished, very great choice for our board. But considering the small amount of time that we're looking at for what this presidency will be, and the number of issues that it will take to get up to speed on how the current board is working through things, I do have a little bit of a pause on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone have more comment before we vote? Yeah.
I'm just going to say I'm going to renew that. I don't think that a presidential appointment needs to be made. I know I seconded Mr. Chang, but I would have voted no on it as well, just to move the meeting along. So I'm just warning you, that's where I'm going and my reasoning behind it.
It's roll call.
Okay, okay, then roll call. Mr. Kiraki,
Nay.
Mrs. Ryan,
I made the motion, so yes.
Mrs. Cowell,
Yes.
Mrs. Chong,
Nay.
Mr. Chen, yes. Okay, motion carry, yeah. So this moment, so we elect Mrs. Cowell to serve as a president. So should we move?
Oh, sure.
Oh, you want to be there?
No, she has to sit with the gavel. You get the gavel.
Maybe just. You're gonna be able to finish this in 15 minutes?
I don't think so. Dr. Lynn has to
No?
speak. I mean, how many minutes do you have to go?
By the way, before new president, thank you so much. Yeah, for the 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chang, for your service. Yes, thank you.
I
Always stepping in.
think tonight my wife will be very happy.
She is one of my favorites. So,
Sure, you owe me dinner.
okay, so, sure. So we're moving on to item 15C, appointments to board committees, board representatives.
I just wanted to say that since those were filled by the president, to move it along really quickly, I would just recommend that those be filled by Ms. Caldwell, since she is our president.
So the three positions where it says
positions.
Mrs. Jack.
Yes, so city liaison, PTA council representative, and San Marino Schools Foundation. So that's my motion.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second it. I'll second it.
Do we always do roll calls?
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is an action item, that's all. It's an action item.
Mr. Chang, can you, I did not hear.
Oh,
Yeah.
I move to have Mrs. President Caldwell serve as the city liaison with me, PTA council representative, and San Marino Schools Foundation.
Okay, I can make a motion, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, you already make
I
a
moved.
motion?
Jane made it.
Oh,
Jane made
So-
it and
Mike
Mike
seconded
Mike
it.
seconded
Okay.
it.
So now we're
Already.
just ready to vote. So Mike, would you like to
Aye.
first? There, that was I. Okay.
Yes.
Shelley,
Aye.
Joseph,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
I. Okay, motion carries. So the next item is compensation for board members.
They put my name either I mentioned or you want to mention.
Oh,
You can read it.
you can do it.
Joseph,
Okay,
read
okay,
it.
I mentioned for our tradition, you know, we are very different from other school districts. So for our little compensation, we always like to, you know, the board member to donate. So this is a action item.
So you're asking me for my
So
donation.
hope you can follow the condition.
I waive compensation. Do you all need to vote on the fact that I'm waiving my own compensation?
Did you make the motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, the new, the designate, newly, appointed, school board member waive for the compensation.
I second.
Great. Any conversation, discussion?
Can I just ask for a clarification, because I see on the document that it says that the board members voted to donate their compensation back to the district.
Yes.
Was it waived or was it accepted and donated back?
Well, traditionally, we don't receive the money and then donate back.
Is it
We just wait.
to waive it?
Yeah, wait.
We waive it.
So
yeah.
waiving it,
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking is because the document in the board packet says at the previous meeting of the reorganization of officers, board members voted to donate their compensation back to the district.
Sorry, Mike, where are you reading that? Is that in the agenda here or is it somewhere else?
It's on, well,
It's the resolution.
it's the 15D board memo compensation for board
Ah,
members.
the memo, I see.
Oh, but that's just the memo. So
Yeah.
that doesn't have any legal binding.
It's what's on the agenda.
So, and since there's that, so it's whatever we actually state in our agenda that holds. So as long as we say in the agenda that the motion is to waive the compensation. So do you want to say that again clearly, Mr. Chang?
Can you help me to rephrase?
Or do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
I make a motion that the compensation for a newly elected board member, Ms. Jeannie Caldwell, be waived.
I just think that is weird for you to.
Quite frankly, I'm not sure we can
I'm
do that.
I'm telling you what to do with your.
But how about if I make the motion? Can I do
Sure,
that?
yeah,
To me,
sure.
that just makes
That
a whole lot more sense.
Okay.
So, well, you did make it. Can you withdraw it? Just.
I
so we
will
can keep-
withdraw.
Okay. All right, I make the motion that I waive the eligible compensation for my position on the board for the duration of my term.
I second.
Any further discussion? Mike?
Roll call.
Aye.
I'm Mike, that's like Shelley,
Aye.
Joseph,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Jeannie, aye. Done.
President Caldwell, I just want to remind you, you have under about 10 minutes left to the extension of time.
You really just
No
put me
pressure.
here. All right, Dr. Lynn, you're up.
Thank you, President Caldwell. Item 15E is an action item for the board to grant authorization for school site principals and assistant principals to sign school site contracts totaling $5,000 or less and warrants drawn on associated student body accounts for cabinet to authorize all warrants, salary payments, and contracts, and the director of maintenance operations to sign contracts up to $15,000 and the purchasing manager to sign purchase orders.
I move to certify the signatures as stated by Dr. Lynn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Mike,
Aye.
Shelley,
Aye.
Joseph,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Jeannie, aye. All right, you're still up. You want to do
Okay.
15F?
Thank you again, President Caldwell. In order to help to ensure that the district is able to fulfill financial obligations, the board is asked to approve the resolution number 16, establishing committed reserves for cash flow, COP repayment, fiscal stabilization, and declining enrollment in the amounts specified earlier in the budget presentation.
I move to commit ending fund balances in accordance with resolution 16.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to, I mean, we're talking about, hold on one moment if we can.
Interruption at 3 in the morning.
No, I'm trying to read the board memo so that I can understand exactly what is going to happen as a result of committing these funds. For example, committing to the cash flow fund of $2 million. Quite frankly, when this was first assigned, or whatever the specific term was that was used, I had concerns that these were duplicative. When we were talking about a $2 million cash flow fund that was being used for cash flow purposes, I also had a concern that that was duplicative of the $2.5 million for declining enrollment, as well as fiscal stabilization. In total, we've got 2.5, 2 million, and another 2 million. We have $6.5 million here. And each of these things seem duplicative. And I really think that we should be looking to, if we're looking at fiscal stabilization or cash flow, solving cash flow problems, if we were going to take the $2.6 million for the state matching funds, as well as the 1.5 million for the COP repayment, as well as another $2 million from this $6 million, we'd have the Barth Athletics Complex paid off and we'd be saving $500,000 a year. That would go a long way toward fiscal stabilization. It would also go a long way to cash flow problems. So I don't know where this money is going to be committed to or what it's actually going to be spent on.
I think the point of it is that it won't be spent on anything except these things that we're committing to.
But committing to what? What are we committing to?
To these line items in the budget.
I know, but what are they going to be used for? We've got $6 million in 3 different line items, and can somebody explain what this $6.5 million will in fact be used for?
So committing the cash flow fund of $2 million will provide the district with a higher rating from the credit rating agencies and lower interest rates. And this will also allow the district the ability to reduce the need for temporary borrowing should the local, state, or federal funding be delayed. Committing to fiscal stabilization fund of $2 million will allow the district to reduce the severity of inflation in materials and pension costs and potential layoffs in the event of a recession. And also committing to the declining enrollment fund of $2.5 million will allow the district to buffer against declining enrollment and provide the district additional time to make adjustments to programs and staffing. Now, the governing board of the school district reserves the right to modify this committed reserve in the future by resolution as the need arises.
So would it be fair to say that, so these are effectively reserve accounts? For you to spend out of them, does the board need to approve the expenditure? So they're not allocated, they're allocated as an idea of where they might be spent. They have some benefit to the district by the allocation. But to actually expend the funds requires that you come in with the designation of what the funds are going to, and then the board has to approve it.
That's correct. The board would adopt another resolution to free up those funds and then assign them for those specific purposes.
Mike, does that answer your?
Well, I guess, so for example, we've got declining enrollment, $2.5 million. Can that money, if this is approved, can that $2.5 million be used for teacher and staff salaries, for example?
I think it could be used to offset potential layoffs. If we had a sharp decline in enrollment in any one given year, we would come back to the board and say that that money might be available to buffer, as Dr. Lynn said, or postpone the layoff of, let's say, 41% of all of our teachers. Because if you look at the 2 parcel taxes in the schools foundation funding that we receive, those 3 sources of local revenues pays for 41% of our teachers. So if they all went away at one time, not that that would ever happen, right? We would need to have a fallback position, because if you get rid of 41% of all of your teachers in one fell swoop, you're going to have to close the doors. You can't continue to keep your doors open. So it's there if the board needs to execute that. But again, we would be having those conversations with the board, and we wouldn't be making unilateral decisions on using that money for that purpose.
Yeah, and I'm not asking that we make a decision tonight that this will in fact be used for teacher or staff salaries. But what I'm wondering is when it says that it will provide the district additional time to make adjustments to programming and staffing, adjustments to staffing, does that include potential increases in compensation or provide for benefits to teachers and staff?
No, because that's one-time money. So as far as ongoing schedule increases, that would never, one-time money is never used for that. One-time money can only be spent one time, and it will not sustain the district in the future. No CPA or school services or FICMAT would recommend doing that ever.
Right. But I'm sorry, but the concern then is, okay, we can't use it for salary increases, but we go back to the rule that we always hear of, well, you don't use one-time money for anything that breathes, right?
That eats
Well,
and breathes, yes.
Right. Well, we would be using it if we were talking about providing for additional time to make adjustments to staffing. That would be used as one-time money.
Yes,
I'm
but
sorry.
only to postpone that decision. The decision, if that was the case, would be inevitable. But what we do is we go back to the schools foundation anytime we have the need to lay teachers off, and we ask them to do special campaigns and so forth. And in the past, we've been criticized that we don't have enough of a reserve to be able to delay, the inevitability of laying off, 40 teachers.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes.
there's a firm stop, I guess, at 11. I believe I recall at some point in the last few years, you all had made an absolute stop at 11 or no extensions beyond 11. So we could just finish this. Okay, well, let me just make
Yes.
one comment, because I think the reason that we're talking about the declining enrollment component in particular is if we had, say, another 100 few students next year, and in the course of this year, we put a plan in place to sort of stem that, tide, right? We thought that in the following year, we'd have the students back. Where I would envision this money being used is in that case. We don't want to release teachers when we know we're going to, in the next year, have classes to fill them. So this is to allow the board time to build a plan to fix the class size, the declining enrollment issue, instead of reducing our offerings and our teachers that provide those offerings, while, because the enrollment's just going down. But Mike, I'm sorry. I mean, we're either going to have to carry this to the 28th, which we could do, but we actually have a motion and a second. So I think, we need to probably call the question and try to resolve it now. And if not, we'll have to take it to the 28th. So Mike, I'm going to ask you to go first. Would you want to be the first vote here?
Well, if there is an option to push this to the 28th so that we can have a meaningful discussion, then I would ask that we do that, because we're talking about $6.5 million.
I've called the question now because we have a motion and a second, and they haven't withdrawn that, which they would have to do for us to, entertain. I mean, you can make a motion.
Okay, then I would say that because $6.5 million is a lot of money, and it requires meaningful discussion prior to a vote rather than a last minute push from one characterization to another, and not fully understanding exactly what the consequences of that are, I would vote against that.
Okay, so you're a no. Shelley?
Yes, I'm a no.
Aye.
Joseph?
Yes.
Jane?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Motion carries. Board superintendent discussion items, can we carry that till next time?
Yes, none for me.
So then I will officially call the meeting.
Are we returning to?
No,
closed?
call.
We have to return to closed.
Make a motion, adjourn, but go back to
Adjourning, and
the
then, yeah.
closed section. Yeah.
I'm happy to, okay, it is an action item. I see that. Yes, I make a motion that we adjourn. Oh, so the question was, because we do need to go back to closed session.
Yeah.
All right, so I know you announced that at the beginning. We need to make a motion to do that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to make that motion?
Yeah, I make motion.
Mhm.
Motion exactly?
Motion, we adjourn the meeting and go back to the closed section.
Second?
Mike?
To go back into closed session, aye.
We're in the open session and return to closed.
Aye.
Okay, that was an aye. All right, Shelley?
Aye.
Joseph?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Jeannie? Aye. All right, so we did them a little bit out of order, but we're covered.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna grab my stuff out of my office and then I will leave you to your business.
Jennifer might need you or someone to sign stuff. Where is Mike calling into?
From hotel.
Yeah, but I mean, what device? What device?
I do need board signature on them. This is our.
I can manage that. You
Remember,
want
you to sign an initial and you need to sign all.
Yeah, I'll send him an invitation then.
And then
I'll
also this
text him right now,
resolution,
let
but
him
if
know.
you want to sign it
you
during
hear me?
close, because I know you have to go in there. We can get everybody's signature then.
I'll text
Well,
Mike right now.
Well, Mike in the Kentucky actually